Hey, this is Emily Soderback of Scarecrow Video's Viva Physical Media.
Hi, this is Matt Lynch, co-host of Viva. The Projection Booth podcast is sponsored by Scarecrow.
Try out Scarecrow Video's rent-by-mail service. Choose from over 155,000 films and get Blu-rays, 4Ks, and DVDs, all delivered directly to your door.
Visit scarecrowvideo.org today.
Hold your ears, folks. It's showtime.
People pay good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
Beautiful, innocent girl on her honeymoon. Her passionate dreams of perfect romance turned into a living nightmare. For this sweetheart she married, the man she had loved, was merely the hollow shell for the invaders from outer space.
Bill!
Who would believe her? Who could help her through the flesh-crawling terror of this unearthly marriage, when anyone she turned to could be one of them? Could she touch the body of this masquerading alien who wanted to learn the secrets of human love?
Your race has no women. It can't have children. It will die out.
Eventually we'll have children with you.
What kind of children?
All kind.
Was it true? Could space monsters mate with Earth women? See the startling answer in the shocker of them all.
Welcome to the Projection Booth. I'm your host, Mike White. Join me once again is Mr. Bill Ackerman.
Good to be invited back, Mike. I'd just about given up hope. I'd been reading books about Florence Nightingale, Joan of Arc, Madame du Barry, career women.
Also back in the booth is Mr. Ben Buckingham.
Good to be here once again as well. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Bill.
We continue a month of sci-fi film discussion with the Patreon request from John Adam, I Married a Monster from Outer Space. Released in 1958, the film was written by Louis Vittes and directed by Gene Fowler Jr. The film stars Gloria Talbot as Marge Bradley, who becomes Marge Farrell early in the film when she marries the titular monster from outer space, Tom Tyrone, as Bill Farrell. We will be spoiling this film as we go along, so if you don't want anything ruined, turn off the podcast, watch the film, and come back. We will still be here. So, Ben, when was the first time you saw I Married a Monster from Outer Space, and what did you think?
Last week. This one was very new to me, always just kind of in the background with that famous title, but nothing had leapt out to make me want to see it until now. And I was very, very impressed by it, very surprised. Kind of surprised I hadn't heard more because it seemed so ripe for having gone through university and studied these kinds of films and had all these interesting ones pulled out that are said to be rich texts and nowhere near as rich as this one.
And Bill, how about yourself?
The first time I saw I Married a Monster from Outer Space was, I guess, when I was 12 or 13. And I knew about it because my dad was a Famous Monsters of Filmland subscriber. And so we had all of those old issues. So I knew what the monster looked like. I knew the title. And I think I liked it well enough as a kid. I mean, they don't make you wait half an hour to see the monster, but I probably rated it below Invasion of the Body Snatchers as a kid. And I circled back to it as an adult after reading about it in cult movies from Danny Perry and getting into things like Douglas Sirk movies that Gloria Talbot was in. So that when I got back to it as an adult, I really came to love it because of the austere domestic melodrama aspect of it that I don't think I would have appreciated as a kid so much.
Yeah, I don't remember the first time I saw this one. Might have been back in 2022 when we were doing the episode on Rosemary's Baby, because it was kind of like vague memories, even though it's 4 years ago. I'm going through things, and like even when I downloaded the remake, the 98 remake, my Plex server told me, oh, you saw this before. I was like, oh, I did. Okay. So all these vague memories of this, like as I go back and I'm rewatching The Astronaut's Wife, it's like, yeah, you saw this back in 2022, dumbass. I'm like, oh, okay, did I? Wow, I just kind of forgot. But anyway, I definitely was familiar with the monster and with certain scenes from this It Came from Hollywood. I was a huge fan of that movie when I was younger, and definitely saw parts of this, especially Bill when he hits the body on the road, obviously just a dummy laying on the road. I saw that. I saw the famous shot of the lightning going off and lighting up his face. But back in 2022, I definitely fell in love with this film. And yeah, I can really see the Invasion of the Body Snatchers as well. I'm sure we'll talk about that as we go along too. But way different of a feel, I would say. I mean, there is some domesticity things going on in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but way more when it comes to this. And interesting that we put a woman at the center of this and have her be the person that married the monster from outer space. I mean, it's such a lurid title, and I always wonder if this would have done better with a different title, but hell, man, I mean, it tells you what it is going in.
I was so struck by how much this felt inspired, or even a love letter to the films of Val Lewton, like I Walked with a Zombie with the title and Cat People, taking that real pulpy, trashy vibe, but going far more expressionist and gothic and focusing more on the feminine and melodramatic aspects than most of these kinds of films tended to do at the time.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Val Lewton, because I was thinking about I Walked with a Zombie as a title that probably creates the wrong impression for audiences, so that they tend to be happily surprised at how subtle and sophisticated a movie it is. But I also do think that, you know, when you have the Cthulhu looking like aliens with the ray guns, I mean, it does live up to the Monster from Outer Space part of that title as well. Like, it's not selling you the wrong film in being so lurid with the title. But yeah, I thought it was interesting reading up on just how it was received at the time, how it would be compared to titles like I Married a Communist or I Married a Nazi, like these kind of expose women's stories. I guess it is in that vein, but it is also being pitched to the mostly like younger boys that were making up that sci-fi 50s boom, the horror boom. So I guess we could talk about how it was kind of, played against things like The Blob when it came out at the time. I guess why it's kind of lasted as a cult movie is because it works as a drama that is endlessly interpretable. And I think that like critics that take these kind of films seriously have always kind of championed this, even though the title, does, it's been a punchline since 1958, and it probably will always be a thing that makes people chuckle initially when they talk about it.
It's interesting that this would be marketed at young boys, and that's who would be seeing this, because this is so subversive when it comes to all of the different subtext going on here. I mean, with Invasion of the Body Snatchers, it is so easy to read that as a metaphor for communism and just the way that they're being infiltrated and the emotionless state of the pod people. And with that too, everyone can be a pod person. With this, it is just men. So we really are concentrating on the, to quote a 2026-ish term, the manosphere of these guys. I mean, we open with these guys at a table, these four men, and I think 5 men, sorry, because Bill leaves the table pretty quickly after they start showing them. and they're just bemoaning like, oh, we're losing another man, and oh, another guy's getting married, and just how horrible this is. And I'm looking at these guys going, are you all bachelors? Like the guy who's the biggest lush at the table, I'm like, you're not married? You've got to be what, 40, 50 years old? I know he's not nearly that old, but it's just like, come on, guys. Like, what is going on here? And yeah, just this whole theme. I mean, let's just say it. I mean, this whole homosexual subtext that goes on through this entire film, it is wild to look at this from that angle and just here are these men that gather in the woods at night and do these untoward things, or alleyways. You know, it's wild that they are hitting all the cruising spots when it comes to where people are being quote unquote transformed into these monsters.
And also that the first bit of dialogue we get in the film is two women commenting on how these guys aren't hitting on them at all.
Also, Tom Tryon being closeted as an actor, I think, has also kind of invited a lot of that reading, the way that, you know, Rock Hudson movies tend to be now kind of looked at through that prism of like, what is it saying, like queer subtext? And I think it's also the case with this movie. There was one chapter of a book I read, I'm trying to remember the author's name, but talking about these men in relation to veterans of war, because I was thinking about that in addition to being the queer subtext that we can talk about with this film, it's also, I was thinking about how they're all pretty much like alcoholics, like, as we're meeting them. I know this is like an odd thing to note, but like I just reread Jimmy McDonough's book on Russ Meyer, because I had Jimmy McDonough on my show. And so I reread that book. And one of the things I thought was interesting about it was how all those World War II veterans like Russ Meyer still had this like brotherhood that was like heavily alcohol driven with the soldiers he served with alongside. And I think about, even though they don't really establish Bill and his friends as war veterans, they have that same kind of like fraternal bond driven, like alcohol driven, that when the aliens take over, they are kind of behind enemy lines, but the alcohol is removed because they can't tolerate it. And so the trauma of that character and like how he can't really engage with her, I mean, it can be read as a queer subtext, but it also be read as PTSD of a war veteran, which I think is also an interesting way to read it. I don't know if any of that is intentional. I don't know really what the screenwriter has ever said about if there's meant to be buried themes or if it's just meant to be a Body Snatchers riff that's kind of a creative variation on that film. But I thought that was interesting, how there's multiple ways to read his alien-like behavior in the home.
Yeah, was that book Monster in the Machine by Stefan Handke? Because I came across that too.
Yeah, could be.
It was much more focusing on the effects of World War II.
And Korea too, yeah.
Yeah, and definitely the trauma aspect, because that was, for me, I think that like I said, the film is a rich text that like can really be read in numerous different ways. And I think it's more just because it's about men. It's that not specifically pinning, I think it is probably pinning a little bit more the trauma stuff down, but because it's just about like there's something not quite right with guys, it really lets you bring in, well, which one do you want to talk about? Because it's so much a film about not talking about stuff and not dealing with it. It's like, oh, well, men are the locus of not talking about stuff. It's like, which thing do you want to talk about that they're not talking about? Let's evoke it. I went and dug into a couple of Gene Fowler Jr.'s other films, and there's a couple of things that really struck me. And I do wonder if the title and the connection, like being pitched as a kid towards younger boys and men, was to do with his previous film being such a huge hit, and that, of course, was I Was a Teenage Werewolf. And that would definitely lock him into being like, oh, well, that guy made us a fortune off of this, rebel without a claws kind of film. When I went to that, it was like, oh, look at this. It's another film about men are the problem. And then I watched Showdown at Boot Hill, which came out in 1958 as well, which was actually had to share the screenwriter with I Married a Monster from Outer Space. And that one is a Western that's very firmly about guys not dealing with stuff and running away from it and death and violence and all the usual things. And it was just like, those three alone were just like, wow, this guy has a theme and he's pretty damn good at it. That trauma aspect, it also, if you put them all together, it really creates a three-dimensional thing that's like, oh yeah, this is about how men don't deal with stuff and the explosive outcomes of it. I was so surprised by how dark and grim I was a teenage werewolf is. I thought that like I Married a Monster from Outer Space felt as grim as that, but then after watching Showdown at Boot Hill, which starts and is mostly as grim as that, that film does actually suggest that forgiveness and moving forward and growing is possible. And then when I came back and watched I Married a Monster from Outer Space again, I felt that he was moving towards that in this film. That it's at least suggested as a possibility through the literal humanizing of Bill, the Tom Tryon's character. Oh man, I really want to check out more of this guy's films, but he only made a handful of films and mostly in like a 2-3 year period, and then that's it. And yet just those three alone was like, whoa, you could write a decent sized book just on these three.
Yeah, I was very unfamiliar with Tom Tryon watching this, and I didn't know that he was gay until I was listening to the audio commentary and going, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then looked into him a little bit more, and one of his last longtime boyfriends was Casey Donovan, the actor from Boys in the Sand, which we talked about years ago. So I thought that was a nice little tie together of these two films.
Yeah, I mainly knew him as the writer of the fantastic 70s horror film, which he wrote the book and then also adapted the screenplay.
Which I still haven't seen. I ran across that a lot when I was doing research on Exorcist II: The Heretic.
I've only seen it once, and I really wanted to revisit it for this because I feel like it's probably got some themes connecting a bit. I remember just being blown away by it.
Yeah, it's got doppelganger theme,
And Americana.
Horror in small town. It's also a theme in Harvest Home, which becomes the TV movie Dark Secret of Harvest Home, which is another book he wrote, adapted from another book he wrote. So yeah, I don't want to get into spoiling those, but there's definitely themes in books he writes later that you could draw parallels to the plot of this, whether or not he intended that or not. But
it's kind of a handsome son of a gun too. He definitely is portraying this all-American male for his soon-to-be bride and then bride, and just that awkwardness though that they have on their honeymoon, and just this whole, this is my first time. Yeah, it's my first time too. And they have no idea what's going on. Really plays into the whole sexual politics of this. Because I think the one thing that, we have brought up a lot of different readings of this, but the one thing that's just there, period, because of the time that it was in, whether it was intended or not, is the sexism and just the role that our poor female lead is kind of put in because of the way that the world was in 1958. Bill, your opening line about, you've read all of these different things, career women, that whole thing. It's like, well, you better get married, ladies, like the one woman who's been pursuing the guy for so long. And I mean, I believe they changed that line in the 98 remake into I was thinking about trying women instead, like something like that. I'm like, okay, so just like writ large, the potential reading of that line, the career women.
You're thinking about Alien Bill in this versus other films that take this kind of premise later, like that remake or like The Astronaut's Wife, which we can talk about. But I think what I like about this film is that he's not purely a villain. And I feel like they kind of make him into more of like a stand-in for abusive men in relationships in later tellings of it. Whereas this, he's closer to David in Village of the Damned, where it's like he's like the one alien being that's still kind of human, or like he's learning to be human, so that it's more tragic when it ultimately doesn't work out for him than the rest of them. It's not just that he's trying to conquer the world. It's not like Invasion of the Body Snatchers where there's an unfeeling wave taking over the town. Like there's a pathos to it because they lost the women and maybe they didn't know what love was, but as they're learning it, that makes their downfall like a little bit more sad than other tellings of it, where it's just purely an alien threat. And I think, even compared to other body snatcher movies, I mean, I think about Invaders from Mars, and again, it's like purely evil, military has to be involved. Like it's nothing like that here, where it's, I mean, you might even feel like a little bit of mixed emotions as the vigilante posse rounds up the dogs to take care of these outsiders, because they're learning how to be people. They have more use for the women than the previous versions of the men did, and they're not drinkers. They're not misanthropic, or maybe in a way like the way that the initial men are. So there's not. It's a little bit more murky whether or not this is like a totally positive outcome.
The threat is a bit more philosophical. Whereas like the remake foregrounds, and we're like, oh, they're already impregnating the women, and that's leading to horrific outcomes almost immediately. But in this, it's like, well, that's still something they're trying to figure out if they can even do. Throughout the film, they themselves are in this limbo, and it does add the philosophical thread is quite shifted by that.
Yeah, well, if you want to read this as a gay panic reading, I mean, I guess post Kinsey report, there's like articles coming out about gay men among us that don't show themselves as being the effeminate stereotype we might imagine, and so they could be anywhere, and they could be, and that kind of terror. And if you read this film as being about that, then the only way that you can really identify them is that at the end of the day, they can't bring children into the world. That's also a difference that you don't have in the other films that tell this story. It's post Rosemary's Baby, and the threat of forced pregnancy by a stranger becomes the real horror, whereas that's not really, maybe because of production code, or maybe because they had just other concerns. Like, it's not really what's happening here. Like, it could happen, but it's really, the scientists are still working on that. It's really just that they can't really love their partner, and that brings it back to the horror of things like the other Body Snatcher movies, where the real sadness of something like Invasion of the Body Snatchers is when a really bright, kinetic kind of romantic dynamic is just rendered gone because now one person has no emotion. Or you think about Invaders from Mars and how the child's nightmare of like the parents no longer love you, and like, so this is not quite played that way because you never see her with the real Bill until the very end. So it's not like you really have a sense of what their dynamic was before.
Yeah, that's such a significant difference to most of them that we don't get the before Bill at all. There's no sense of who they are together, who he is. And there's also no like nostalgic before to try and save. Like, the opening of the film is this kind of tainted world where it's like just people bitching and complaining, and like the first human interaction we see is a couple making out and then a dude slamming the side of the car to give them a fright. And it's like everything is like, this is a bit of a bad taste vibe, like bad taste in the mouth kind of vibe. And it's like that's the total opposite to like most of the other body snatcher kind of invasion films where it's like, oh, look at the perfect suburb and look at this. It's like, no, this is, if we get a beautiful lake and a beautiful world, but the people in it are kind of suck.
Yeah, I love that line from Invasion of the Body Snatchers when Kevin McCarthy's kissing the girl, and like you get that voiceover of like,
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky.
When I was looking up Gene Fowler Jr., there's so much in his filmography that you're like, oh, whoa, what? You did what? Because he was an editor for years before he moved into doing directing and worked with Fritz Lang and Sam Fuller. But he did Sex Hygiene, the very famous World War II military educational film co-directed by John Ford. And I feel like Sex Hygiene kind of hangs over this film because it is like, oh, these are people who haven't learned how to be together because there's you don't talk about that stuff until you get married, and then it's too late and you're on your own together.
When she goes to visit the doctor to be like, is it my fault? That whole thing. I mean, that whole sequence of her visiting the doctor the first time feels like it's right out of a sex ed film.
Yeah, and her unfamiliarity with what her insides look like as they look at the x-ray machine, like that's really foregrounded there.
Yeah, I remember reading one article and it's just like, oh, look at, they have to check her, like it's all about what's inside of her rather than what's inside of the men. The men actually do have something else inside of them. Her, they're like, no, we're going to examine you and like basically put all the onus on this woman character where it's just like, no, you're to blame if things aren't going well at home, honey. Like the way that she has to write her mother and everything. We get that 1 year time jump in here where it's like, here we are, we still haven't conceived, what's going on, we don't know what's happening, and she's writing to her mom like, he's not the man that I knew before. before. And it's like, well, is that just because this is married life, or is this because your husband is a creature from outer space?
I think it's also interesting that it's a film that has characters that are both, experiencing sexual naivete, because you think about the target audience being like young men in the late 50s, like how many of that target audience would have known what a honeymoon was like either? It's not speaking over their head, whereas I think the audience for something like Rosemary's Baby would have been more sexually experienced, and it would not have been the same innocence as maybe a lot of the viewers for a Blob, I Married a Monster double feature in 1958.
Thinking about how I was a teenage werewolf and how much that was directed at young angry men and the issues that they were having. In this way, it's also maybe like, hey guys, if it's like this, maybe there's something wrong.
I mentioned that one woman who is like, oh, I finally bagged the guy that I was going after. That guy is the one who's like the biggest lush that I mentioned before, who's shorter than all of the other men. He almost looks like a living Fred Flintstone to me. Like if Fred Flintstone's voice came out of his mouth, I would not be surprised. And I love when Marge sees her friend on the street and she is announcing like, oh, I finally bagged him. He's sitting in the passenger seat. Like she's the one that's driving. I'm like, this is an interesting relationship. I'm surprised that they would let women drive at all. I mean, I'm still mad that they got the vote.
You're talking about the Sam character, and it's interesting because you think about the aliens in these other films, and like part of it is like they're so cold and affectless. And the thing about these aliens is that once they are comfortable in those suits, they kind of get into having sex with these women. They can kick back at the picnic and kid around and make jokes, and they aren't just these blank kind of characters. And whether or not it's because they have some residue of the emotions of the people they're inhabiting. Like the Sam character is the one that is most into being an Earthling. He has a personality. Like he's playful with Bill when he like lets him know kind of casually, like, hey, I'm an alien too, but he plays a game with it. Like he doesn't just say, hey, I know we're both, inhabiting, like he has fun with it. Like there's emotion to them, even though they're supposed to be quote unquote emotionless or whatever. Like they're not. And that's also what's interesting compared to some of the other ones where humanity is being replaced by something that has no emotion is part of the Red Scare element of it. And that's not really, they're just getting comfortable in this new skin, which I think is interesting because you don't know what that would be like in a year had they not been detected.
Him letting Bill know that he knows. I mean, what a pickup scene that is, right?
Aren't you going to join me?
Well, I didn't get engaged today.
I haven't seen you take a drink since you were married, Bill.
Well, I guess I've lost my taste for this stuff.
Uh-huh.
Well, are you going to drink that or just hang on to it?
You know, I've lost my taste for it, too.
I'll get the policy.
I don't need it. Did you make many mistakes at first?
Selling insurance?
No. Wearing this thing. The design's pretty lousy.
How much did you have before you came here tonight?
I'll say one thing for humans. They may not be very bright, and their bodies fall apart in a ridiculously short time, but they do manage to enjoy themselves.
You celebrating Be Kind to Humans Week?
They've improved the methane reservoirs in these bodies. You're due to report to the ship tonight.
There's a very strong implication that they are becoming who they've adopted as their forms. Because the guy in that scene where they're all at the bar talking, and the guy who's like, oh, yeah, get away from me, woman, is the one who's most like, oh, yeah, marriage, the only solution is mass suicide. He's still got that kind of vibe happening where Sam is like, the cool bounty, like, yeah, and he seems to be rolling with it and adapting that. Of course, the cop is still a cop. He's like the closest the film comes to like cold, emotionless, aggressive, bad guy.
Patronizing.
And he's the cop. And I was like, oh, yep, cool. This film's very ACAB. Very, very ACAB.
Yeah, it's interesting that the Doctor is one of the few guys that isn't replaced because it feels like they're going after all of these authority figures. They definitely have all of the, well, I don't know if all the cops are monsters or if that's just the way that they are, as you say. I mean, the whole thing of when she's trying to get the word out and, oh, sorry, all the lines to Washington are down, and, oh, the telegraph guy rips up the telegraph, and then she tries to get out of town. Oh, the bridge has been washed out, even though it hasn't rained that much. I mean, that's one of the few instances where she starts to even show some agency, where she's like, it hasn't rained in days. And they're like, no, it's gone. It's gone. And you can just see, like, I mean, by then she knows everything that's going on, which is nice that our main character, that Marge, knows what the hell's going on, can figure out what's going on, that she isn't just in the dark the entire time. But yeah, I love that it's all of these authority figures, but then the Doctor isn't. You know, and you would think that in 1958, a Doctor would be one of the main people that they would go after. And I want to say the Doctor is definitely a pod person in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Feels like that's one of the first people that they would transform.
You know, they know how to travel from planet to planet, but they might not be comfortable delivering babies. And that's the whole point that they're there. So I think that's why they leave him alone, because, you know, that's...
Good point, Bill. Good point. Yeah, that's his one purpose, is as soon as we get this baby factory open, and we'll get going here with this stuff, and you'll be up to your elbows in newborns.
I like that he also like vaguely flirts with her as like after the like, you know, like, oh, you're, you know, like he compliments her appearance before, like, but seriously, let's talk about the medical part of it. Like, you know, he's still all man because he still has like that like tiny hint of like acknowledging her sexually. Yeah, that's how you know he's not an alien.
By pure coincidence, I recently started watching Resident Alien, the Alan Tudyk series, and it's basically almost a chunk of this film that he has to take over being in a person on Earth and hiding there. And as the longer he's playing it being human, the more the human DNA is seemingly affecting him and altering him. And in that, the person he takes over is a doctor. So for a chunk of the first season, he has to pretend to be a doctor and quickly learn everything. And they get a lot of comedy out of that. So having now watched this, I'm like, oh, the person who wrote this definitely saw this film and did a bit of a remix on it.
How does Alan Tudyk get along with animals in that series?
It's generally pretty okay. I don't think they have much stuff with animals in it.
Okay, because that's probably the most upsetting part of any version of this story is the aliens and just how they don't get along with pets. And my God, that scene, you don't even see anything. You just hear the noise. And it breaks your heart every time.
When the cat gets it and it does that huge yowl, this fuzzy one sitting behind me was under a blanket on my lap and leapt about 6 feet in the air. I was like, I'm sorry, it's just a film. It's just a film. Don't look.
Like we talk about the idea of the haunted veteran, the PTSD veteran. One of my favorite horror films is a film called Death Dream, and part of that is the young soldier kills the family dog. Spoiler alert, because again the dog recognizes that this is no longer the person that they knew, and that I mean that's a trope that you see in lots of movies where the dog sees what the people don't, as far as this is their threat. I mean, I think that goes back to even like The Stranger with Orson Welles and things like that. Like it's a noir thing as well as a horror thing.
It goes back to the Odyssey, right? With the dog that's been waiting for Odysseus to come home after all those years, and he's the only one that recognizes him.
Those aspects would ties this to the horror genre a lot more. I had thought of Death Dream as well, like how much these films have in common, and that also ties it in with the trauma aspect. And I feel, I Married a Monster from Outer Space, even though it's trappings of sci-fi, aliens and all that, as I said, the Val Lewton connection, the gothic aspect of the expressionist aspect does feel like it ties it more into horror traditions and noir traditions.
It's shot in like the Malibu Lake area. And if you know Frankenstein, that's the lake that the monster tosses the girl into that drowns. I think the drowning scene, I'm not sure. I haven't seen the bad seed in a long time, but the bad seed is also shot around there. Twin Peaks, parts of that were shot around there, like the gazebo scene. So it's like, it's actually a location that has a lot of tie to horror and horror adjacent kind of fiction and entertainment. So I mean, that's also like the relation to LA. Like it's a convenient location, but that part of California, I think, is also where things like Poltergeist and Phantasm are also not far from there. So as a rustic location, I mean, that's something I thought about with the 50s and how horror post World War II and the GI Bill and the expansion of suburbia, American horror and sci-fi horror starts invading small towns, whereas like it's the heyday of Hammer and Gothic period set horror coming out of England, but in America, like some of the counter programming. I mean, you have the post cycle from Corman and all that as well, but I mean, you start getting things like the William Castle movies and Invasion of the Body Snatchers and films that are set in Invasion of the Body, that are set in small town America and like the mundane location where the threat occurs. And I've always found that really, you know, as someone that grew up in the suburbs myself, like as a kid, I always responded to those stories way more than things set, you know, in faraway times and castles and such, because it felt more relatable as a kid to see an environment that you recognize. I think that's why things like Invaders from Mars had such an impact on directors like Spielberg and Dante and that come later, because they saw it at an age where they really saw themselves in the boys' shoes. And I think about this film, and I don't know if it is made directors really cite it as influence. I don't know if John Carpenter was thinking about it when he made Starman, but like I do think that that idea of the uncanny in everyday America was only like a relatively new trope in movies.
The confrontation between the cops and the criminals felt like it's something it could have been in a David Lynch film, especially how it was shot. But I got some real like Nightmare on Elm Street vibes from some of Marge's experiences and her arc. It really struck me as being somehow I couldn't quite pin down what it was, but there's something that felt really strongly connected to Nancy's experiences in Nightmare on Elm Street and the way that her world was falling apart in the suburban space. I reckon this must have been an influence on Wes Craven at some level, because it just feels like lots of his films have an aspect of this bubbling through them.
Well, you guys mentioned noir, and yeah, the lighting in this, especially in that scene where Marge goes downstairs and finds the dog dead. I mean, those shadows are so harsh. I just absolutely love how this is lit. I mean, this movie, yes, it's got a cheesy title that we've already discussed, but it is one of the most gorgeous films. It looks so good. It's like, you think about quote unquote cheesy sci-fi, and it's like, well, it doesn't have to look that good. I mean, you know, the giant shrews, those kind of things. It's like, all right, yeah, it isn't like the nicest looking movie in the world. This looks really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. That Fritz Lang influence from having worked as his editor for years is so front and center. And like I said, that Val Lewton vibe of the leaning into that expressionist, and like, yeah, Tom Tryon, like he might not be the most emotional actor, which is obviously what he's meant to be like here. He's meant to be a bit alien, but like, you just look at his face and the way the light hits it. Like he's got such an angular face with the bone structure, and he's got those big beefy arms that he looks like he would have been a great Frankenstein's monster. And it's just like he fits in the architecture and the lighting perfectly.
The use of shadows and the angles and such, I mean, does evoke noir in a way that I think is really satisfying and creepy. But I have a weakness for day for night photography, and there's so much of this that feels like black, like when used well. Like I don't know, for some reason I really love it, and I know it's never been like a fashionable, like people always kind of. It takes people out of the movie because they can see the effect. But I think the whole idea of like seeing shadows and like what appears to be sunlight that is supposed to be moonlight, like gives like all of those scenes where she's like walking, like following him at night, like, I don't know, just like a slightly different alien quality that I really kind of think helps the film. That I think that the color versions that have bigger budgets that come later can't really capture that quality somehow. It's like they feel pretty in a more conventional way, whereas this feels like a little bit has more personality to it, even if it is them working with a low budget and they're just trying to use that budget for whatever they can, stretch it however they can. I think with more money, they have something that's more quote unquote professional, but it's well, not professional, but more anonymous, I guess, maybe, than this, where it's I really call it not as extreme as Invaders from Mars, which is real kind of super designed, you know, and kind of surreal. This isn't like that, but I do think that the tutelage under people like Fritz Lang probably influences how he understands how to tell this story, and more so than in I Was a Teenage Werewolf, where it really doesn't call attention to the style so much. It's more kind of focused on performance and even more focused on special effects with the look of the creature. But I think here, with the resources of a major studio, he's using the noir playbook to tell sci-fi, which I don't think you really have a lot of science fiction that feels noirish then. I mean, other than things like Alphaville that are more self-consciously mashup.
I also am a huge Day for Night nerd. I always go, yay, when it pops up. Get very excited. It was only on a second viewing that I even clocked that some of the scenes were meant to be Day for Night, because so much of it is this expression of shadows and darkness. I was like, oh, wait, it's not daytime?
Wendy's like, you idiot, you should have had your lights on. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
It's like 1 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
It's like, this is, it's real shadowy in this town all the time.
Yeah, there were quite a few times where I'm like, oh, this is night. Okay. All right. I got it now.
And I love that it kind of has like this weird little mini noir short film inside of it with the criminal character. That it's like, you could just cut that out on its own and let it sit as a film and it would be something.
Compared to Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where we're with the man the entire time, seeing the whole thing through his perspective, there's a lot where we're not with Marge, where there's things that we're learning about the alien on his own. The whole episode with that shady character lurking around, there's a lot that she's never clued in on, that we're clued in on as the viewer. Like, I like the fact that he's stalking her and she never has any knowledge of it the entire time. She only sees him for like 1 minute, but he becomes a character that, you know, has his own little storyline, a short one. But I mean, I there's a fair amount that doesn't keep us in her shoes. And I don't know if that's because they didn't trust that the audience would care about a woman's story for 90 minutes, or if they just had no other way to get all this information out that they wanted to cover, that there'd be no way to logically have her witness all of it. And they weren't going to do the Invaders from Mars, it's all a dream thing, and have her remembering things that she's not present for. But I didn't think about that, because you think about the pacing of this and how it's so fast that you don't have time to really question things. It kind of goes so quickly, but it does tension dissipate by having us leave her paranoia to like fill us in. Like we're not in the dark the way that she is.
That scene is so impactful with the criminal versus the cops. Like, it really shocks you the way it's shot. That's another thing that struck me, was the use of music in this and how often we just get silence or the sounds of like the world. And that's one where there's like no music. It's just the street, and it's this absolutely like, it felt like something that like it made me think of like bits in the Stephen King's books, where it'll just be these little jags that he goes off on where a character meets the end, and it just, everything grinds to a halt and freezes in this chilling way that you never forget. It struck me so strong. And actually, like, saying that, it's like, yeah, of course, Stephen King definitely borrowed from this film doing that, because he loves his shitty sci-fi. It adds such a fascinating wrinkle, because there's only two kinds that really see through the aliens and spot them, and that's animals and a criminal. The criminal is the hero for a brief bit. He doesn't make it out, but like, he's the one who actually goes like, no, I see you, I see what you're doing, and tries to take action, but it doesn't have enough information and knowledge to make it work. But for a brief bit, he's like the only heroic figure in the film up to that point.
On the more underworld side of things, you have the woman who hangs out at the bar, who I don't know if she's an actual prostitute or if she's quote unquote just a floozy, but just the way that she gets treated in this movie is awful. And just that she's shot in the back by a laser gun, but she is, for me, one of the more sympathetic people in this movie.
Yeah, Francine, the character's name. I can't remember the actress's name, but she's fantastic. She's has so not much to work with, and just is so memorable in it, and really like makes an impact. Her death scene is also like, don't look now much. Just as creepy as Don't Look Now. Like, again, that same thing with no music. They're just this silence, like not showing you much at all. You just like hairs on the back of the neck, like, yeah, something's not right here.
The park also invokes the brood, which is also taken from Don't Look Now.
That's another like sort of cuckoo's nest kind of story.
That was Valerie Allen was Francine, and mostly know her as being one of the people on the party line that Rock Hudson sings to in Pillow Talk. That it's a monster wearing like a hoodie in front of the store window, looking at the baby dolls, like longing for children and stuff. And then you've got the great like turnaround, and she freaks out, and you don't ever see full on, but you see the reflection in the window after he turns back after killing her.
That's like, I remember like first year at university doing film studies and having to write, like 1,000 words on a 3-minute scene. And it's like, oh man, if I knew that scene existed, like I could have written 3,000 words on that. Cause it's like, first it opens with Francine coming out and stopping and like checking her tights and stretching out her legs just off her gams right in front of the church supplies store with the Virgin Mary's there at the window, the bar in the background next door. And it's like, okay, there's a lot going on here. And then that final shot of that scene is we're looking over the shoulder of the alien at its reflection in the glass of the store. And yeah, it's a baby doll there, which is like, oh, because they want babies. But also that ties it back to the uncanny and Freud's writing on the uncanny being dolls as the main representative of it. And how much of this film is, again, going back to that horror aspect, is about the uncanny, of the unhomely, that's which is almost but not quite.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that character, does betray the conservative side of this film, because I agree that she's one of the more sympathetic characters. I don't know if the film thinks of her that way, and that she's kind of shot in the back in the most, for being flirtatious with men that are not showing interest. Like it's a way of punishing that character, whereas almost everyone else survives in the movie. I think she's dispatched the most coldly, and it's really just because she talked too forwardly to an alien that's just trying to check out this doll and kind of be in parental thoughts.
I don't know if it's just that though, because so much is made. We get a real close up on her of how she reacts to the bartender confronting the group of men, and how he gets humiliated and treated really badly, and she just reacts to like nothing. Like just takes it in. And it feels like that is actually maybe more emphasized than anything with how she speaks to what she thinks is some dude on the street.
That's a good point. Well, she's responding to their macho coldness, I guess. Like she's responding to them because they are more powerful than this older, weaker man. And so she's responding to the machismo of these aliens.
And that feels like the greater crime with the way the film language is structured.
Yeah, no, that's true.
I absolutely love that bartender. Absolutely love him. Maxie Rosenblum, Slapsy Maxie, the former professional boxer, who's just got that great voice.
She didn't look like a lush.
They don't wear badges, I can tell you. There was this little old dame who looked just like your grandmother.
I never seen my grandmother. You happen to know who the broad was?
Yeah, she's Mrs. Fowler.
Local?
She married a guy who sells insurance in town a little over a year ago. Bill Fowler, that's it, Bill Fowler. He used to drop in here every once in a while just to knock one over. I guess she's taking over all the drinking for the family now.
And I love that in both this and the remake, which we'll talk about later, it's the bartender who never gets turned because he's basically old and lonely kind of a character. So, or married to a woman who's past her prime, really is probably why these guys aren't going to be going after the bartender here. But yeah, his attitude and just like, because alcohol is such an important part of this whole thing. I mean, we think back to these movies at this time and earlier where it's just like every time somebody walks into a room, it's, what can I get you? What are you drinking tonight? And it's just like, that was such the, probably maybe in real life too. I don't know. Like my parents had a fully stocked liquor cabinet. I'm sure a lot of people's parents had those, but comes from a different age where it's just like drinking. And yeah, it's such a big deal that these guys aren't drinking anymore. And that's one of the tells, right? When Sam comes in and he's like, what can I get you? He's like, oh, I'll take this. I'm really not drinking anymore either. And it's like this, secret code between them. It's like, no, I'm not performing performing this ritual that we always do as men of this time.
I think it's important to remember that the people making this film are not far removed from the generations where in America it would have been safer to drink the alcohol than to drink the water.
True.
It's also a tell in the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, because even before they know that there's an alien threat, they go to the nightclub or the bar and it's empty. And so they get the martinis served right away because business has died off, and then they can't even enjoy their martinis because they get a call there's some medical problem. But that's one thing that also links it to Invasion of the Body Snatchers, is that one of the first industries that is harmed by the alien invasion is the nightlife.
Yeah, these communists, they don't know how to party.
And who wants to live under that kind of,
That's not my America, damn it.
No.
I want to be able to shoot cans of Bud Light whenever I want to.
Go back to like the trauma aspect of it and the connection to World War II and the veterans and such. The Reds under the bed thing with these films, the more I think about it, the more I feel like that is certain right-wing factions co-opting a narrative to suit their ends rather than what it actually represented. Because the more you learn about American history in the 20th century, it's like, there were Nazis floating around really openly for a long, long time, both post, during, and after the Second World War. Like, they were really out there and visible. And these films strike me so much more, especially when you look at how, like, the Hollywood being a lot more liberal and having been targeted as communists, that so many of these films feel much more like the infiltration of fascists, not maybe specifically Nazis, and definitely not in this case because they don't have that same vibe. But I think the Reds under the bed theme is like, I think people too easily and too readily adopted that as the primary theme for most of the 20th century, and I think it's much more appropriate to be like, we've always had issues with really bad people coming in and trying to destroy a way of life and holding up a nostalgic vision of it to try and delude you.
So few people exist in this town, and that's obviously a function of, or a result of it being a low budget film and not having the scale of something like even Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which seems to have a large community being affected. I mean, this feels like so few people, and no children either, I don't think, in this film, compared to other body snatcher type movies. And it's an idea that they're trying to create children, but it's like when they can't get out of town because the roads are closed or because the telegram is sent, like they really feel so isolated that it feels like a more contained situation than, if it were set in a city where you really couldn't put any kind of, there'd be no hope because it would spread too fast. I mean, that does give kind of almost more of a fairy tale feel, that it feels like so kind of locked into that one little place, and a child-free place.
I want to go to there. I absolutely love the nightmare-ish sequence because it's not a dream. It's a living nightmare where she's running away after she sees Tom and pushes, I keep saying Tom, but Bill. And it's because I don't want you to think I'm talking to you, Bill, but
yeah.
Heaven forbid I talk to you. But when she sees him and he tips over and you get that, it's not a real bug, but it's the shadow of a bug, like a double exposure of this thing going across his face. And like, I kept reading about, this cockroach goes over his face. I'm like, that was a cockroach? Like, I couldn't really tell what the hell it was. But then when she runs away from there and you get that montage of her running and the creature walking and Bill's face and all this, and you're just like, wow, this is great. And when she finally falls down and everything, it's like you get that great dreamy effect to the screen and everything. I just love that kind of stuff. I mean, it elevates it for me far beyond just like a normal creature from outer space type movie.
Yeah, that's when you really go, oh yeah, that's right. The editor of this also edited Psycho and Vertigo, and it's really on display there.
I'd have to look at them side by side to see if it's actually what I'm thinking of. But when that scene you're talking about where she's running and it dissolves into the creature following in pursuit, I do think about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Sally running and then it dissolving to Leatherface chasing her. And I think that's also Friday 13th Part 2 copies that Chainsaw, where it's like the girl running and then there's also Jason following. And I don't know. I mean, I assume that lots of films have used that film grammar. I don't know that the horror filmmakers of that generation were necessarily influenced by this, but I did think about like how that. I mean, it's not like it's walking, not running, but it seems to point towards the way that contemporary or more contemporary horror films, would be telling that kind of that chasing in a more kind of amplified way than this, where it's more kind of surreal and ends kind of ambiguous. Well, it ends like almost like a dream, but the language of it kind of evokes more intense films to come.
Well, yeah, because she falls, and then when she looks up, she's back in town. And it's like, how did you make that amount of distance in that amount of time? And it's interesting that you're saying it's a chase scene, because I didn't picture the alien that she keeps flashing on. I wasn't picturing that as the alien chasing her. So I love that we have these two different ways of approaching that.
That scene's the one that really made me think of I Walked with a Zombie. Like the way that he's standing, the way he's shot with the big eyes and everything felt very much like that. But it's been so long since I've seen that. I can't remember if there was a similar kind of constructed scene. But the Texas Chainsaw Massacre thing, like Cooper was definitely, again, a 50s sci-fi film guy. As we know, we did Invaders from Mars. That kind of film language in Texas Chainsaw is taken from Oni Baba, which I don't know if Hooper ever actually saw, but if you've watched Oni Baba and compare it to Texas Chainsaw, it's like, oh, these have a lot in common at many, many, many levels. That expressionist kind of element there is definitely at the foreground of like a bit of Cabinet of Dr. Caligari kind of like seeping through, where it's also dream, nightmare, awake, like the different realities melting together.
I can see Caligari as being a little bit of an influence on the creature design. I mean, you said Cthulhu before, I believe, Bill, and I can definitely see that. But when the lightning flashes on their face, or it seems like they might even be able to make their face change when they want to with that Sam scene. But like when she's in talking with the police captain and you see the lightning outside and you're like, okay, this is probably going to show on his face and show that he's an alien at the end. And sure enough, the way that they do this double exposure of the alien face over their face, it doesn't really evoke the alien design to me. It evokes more like, well, I guess it's like the Arlie Ermy saying, like, you're so ugly you could be a modern art masterpiece. It looks like the way that the lines are, looks almost like painting rather than the creature design for me.
Yeah, it also evokes people who are victims in people who suffered significant physical damage in the wars. Like it looks like physical traumatic damage to their body, which just leaves like sinews and stuff exposed.
I think that one chapter on veterans kind of implied that like it's like the physical damaged veteran is underneath, but it's but on the surface they seem healed and fine, but under the surface there's trauma and damage that you can physically see on their face when the light hits.
And the boom of the thunder representing like the boom of artillery, flashing back, like connecting through time. The special effects in this are like really tremendous. In fact, it's only the cockroach bit that is just like, yeah, okay. Otherwise, I love the way they use the overlay of kind of moving light static on the aliens. So instead of just looking like rubbery dudes in suits, you get this really unnatural, uncanny motion and a strange kind of living organism that does feel like it came from the stars.
We've talked a lot about Tom Twyker, but what do you guys think of Gloria Talbot as our lead actress? She's
a big part of the appeal of it for me, and I think part of it is because I love All That Heaven Allows, and so I just to have her from that soap opera world bringing as the lead in this more fantastic soap opera, I think is kind of a fun bit of casting. I think Danny Perry writes about her in cult movies, saying that like she brings like a stubborn fearlessness maybe to the situation that like is also part of the appeal, that like she's not backing away from it in like she's a strong character in this situation, like she's trying to find someone to help, but she's also not cowering in fear when she realizes that she's living with an alien. Like she's just still trying to solve the problem. That makes her likable and relatable, even in this kind of fantastic scenario. But I don't know that I feel the same way about someone like Charlize Theron, who's a great actress, but maybe not as well served in Astronaut's Wife, which has a lot of common elements to this.
It's been a while since I saw All That Heaven Allows, but when I finished saw her, I was like, oh, yeah, I think she was in that when I looked up. She plays the daughter, isn't it?
She plays the daughter who, it's not quite as monstrous as the kids in There's Always Tomorrow, but there's the idea that like she's imposing the conservative value. Oh, you can't really be with that guy. I mean, think of what our friends are going to say. Like that kind of peer pressure thing, but like even worse because you're going to make your own kids feel like they're less happy in life because of your romantic choices. And so that's what she represents in the Cirque film. So I do love that about this film, that it kind of plays like those kind of domestic melodramas of the Cirque style, but with this kind of fantasy monster element. So it's and the noir look of it too. So it's all these things I like about 50s films kind of swimming together in a way that I can't think of another film that really blends them like that, which is part of why I think it's always kind of stood apart from even Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is also noirish and paranoid in a way that Lang could definitely appreciate. But it's this maybe because of the domestic melodrama is stronger in this than Body Snatchers. It just it complements it rather than feels like they're in competition.
I had that vague memory of it, and I did get the feeling that you could read this as like a meta sequel where it's like, oh well, you were terrible to your mother, now you get to go through a different kind of experience that'll maybe give you some insight, which certainly it works quite well. Not that we get any kind of sense of her being that kind of person, much like with Bill, we don't get anything of what she was before the film starts.
But she does reprimand her mother in the first scene for singing Here Comes the Bride. Like she's just irritable and
stop singing that dirge.
Right.
Another one of the many negative things that is in the first part of
that's a good point
about marriage. Yeah, the film has a very low opinion of marriage from the outset, I think. One of the strengths of her character is that there's no hint of a hysterical woman in the characterization. She never tips over. Her frustration and anger feels real. Like it is genuine. It's like, hey, no, you guys are all screwing with me. Like it hasn't rained in weeks. Like it feels so real and not theatrical. It feels quite modern in her portrayal of this woman. And I think also like the paranoia of the film feels lived in. So it doesn't, like, paranoia is definitely part of it, but it doesn't come across as the typical, like, yeah, the red's under the bed, whatever kind of invasion paranoia. It is like, no, something is genuinely wrong and we need to deal with it.
Well, it's also because of the time it takes. I mean, Invasion of the Body Snatchers takes place over a series of hours, whereas this is like over a year trying to make this work with this alien.
Yeah, I had a thought at one point. I was like, wow, Marge clocked on to just said something's not right real quick. Oh, wait, it's a year later.
I'm always looking for doubling in movies, right? And this is a great one to look for it. And when you have, like you said, you don't necessarily ever see Bill and Marge together in the early part of the film. You don't even see their wedding, right? Like it goes from them behind the scenes to 1 year later pretty quickly. Or do you see the wedding?
You don't. You see them kissing.
And then you get the wedding later on. So it's nice that it's like there's kind of a void of a wedding. And then you've got the wedding scene later on between her friend and Sam. And it's kind of a similar scene when Marge pulls the lady aside and it's just like, hey, have you noticed like weird things going on? And just kind of like trying to warn her. It feels very much like when Sam and Bill are having their little like, hey, we know each other kind of thing. And here she's trying to reach out to her friend, one of the only other women in this film, and is trying to warn her. But no, her friend just walks right out. No, I'm good. Everything's fine. Don't try to harsh my buzz here. I'm so excited to finally get married. And then the way that Bill comes in and is just like, what were you trying to tell her, darling? She doesn't have that agency that he has by being, in this manosphere and, having his great cover story of selling insurance. Because that was the one thing when I was watching this yesterday, my wife was like, doesn't anybody have a job? And I'm like, well, there's the bartender and the cops and the doctor. But yeah, I guess we just get the cover story of Bill selling insurance. But I don't know what Sam does. I don't know what any of these other guys do other than sit around and drink before they get taken over by aliens.
There's an interesting thing with watching it a second time, because as you said, Bill, like it does move so quickly, you don't get a chance to stop and question anything. And there was quite a few things which just like breezed by the first time. They didn't even like, wait a minute, hang on. And one of them is that, yeah, it's a year later. And the conversation when Sam comes to him and is like, hey, you know, I'm an alien too. It's like, wait, that implies that Bill's been an alien for a year and has not had any contact with the other aliens. And they haven't seemingly done anything either. And then you do get that the two cops arguing, and the older cop says to the younger cop, oh, you've been real cold to me for a couple of months now. So you're like, okay, well, they've been infiltrating the cops in the background, but even that's still relatively recently. So there is an implication that Bill has been sent as this sort of advanced guard, but has seemingly gone a little AWOL and has been enjoying, or at least relishing, being a human and in this world and experiencing it. And they're kind of like, you know, Sam turning up is kind of like, hey, buddy, remember what you're meant to be doing here?
Yeah, the company sent me. They want to make sure that you're doing your job out here in the field.
That is actually like really massive implications for how to read the whole film and everything that comes before and after that.
Yeah, I think I'd read one review of it somewhere which implied that the aliens had already been there at the time that Bill gets taken over. But I feel like the only men we meet are drinking, which is a giveaway that they're not aliens. So I don't know if I've ever read it that way. I do.
The opening shot of the film is us traveling towards the Earth, which you could take as being like, well, the aliens are arriving.
I do like that they use bodies as dummies to trick people. Like that's their only technique for luring people is just it's like a dead body on the ground.
Hands down, the like strangest, most perplexing thing in the entire film that it moves slightly. Like they've clearly got a string attached to the arm of the dummy to jerk it a little so that the person driving to it in the dark with 1950s car headlights thinks, oh, it might be real. What?
I like the slow reveal of their powers when it comes to like him squeezing that lighter and you're like, oh shit, they are super strong. Or later on when he sees that criminal outside and he closes his eyes and calls psychically to the cops. It's like, oh, this is a network here. You know, this is very much that, you know, men together type of thing where it's just like, hey buddy, you know, got this problem over at my house. How about you come over and take care of this guy?
Yeah, I actually love how subtle it is, the way that they hint that he's different. Like the car headlights thing, that he forgets to turn the car headlights on because his eyes are clearly superior and can see in the dark. And there's so many little great bits like that that set it up not without giving too much away too early, but also means that it's not like too obvious for Marge to be figuring it out. And that was something that was really underlined with the remake, where it was just like doing everything they could to be like, hey, look, they're aliens.
Yeah, I'm champing at the bit to talk about that one, but yeah, let's save that for a little bit. I love, like you're saying, the opening credits where we're getting closer to Earth and the way that the credits are curved as if they were coming, you know, from space to Earth, the way that we're moving in, and you get that great echo shot at the very end where you see Earth again after the cops like the mission's scrubbed, like get out of here kind of thing, try another planet, you know, and you get all of those ships that are leaving from Earth. I'm like, holy shit, how many times is this going on? Is this small towns all over the world or all over America? I mean, it's wild to see all of those alien vessels leaving when you thought it was just the one.
Yeah, there is suddenly a lot of spacecraft, and it's like, were they just hanging out, waiting to see how this one mission went? That kind of felt like more what was being implied, because it doesn't really make sense for them to all like completely fail, especially when most of the evidence has been destroyed that they were there, because they turned into a big pile of mushy, sparkly jelly when they die and they blow up the ship. So it's like there's not like there'd be evidence they could continue on, but it does seem like, no, this is a bust. Let's get out of here. it's not worth it, despite him earlier having saying, you overestimate like how much life is in the galaxy or whatever it is he says. It seems a bit silly that they bail so easily.
We get that line that she asked, and that ties into what we were discussing before about how Bill is falling in love with Marge and turning him more human. She has that line, did you love your women on your own world? And it's like, no, we didn't. It's like their whole society seems to be set up in just very men are together, women are together kind of thing. And we just come together for breeding purposes. There is no love. And again, that kind of does play into that Red Scare of like, these creatures have no love, but this fine red-blooded American woman can teach how to love if you just stick with her for a little bit over a year, I guess.
Yeah, there's also the thing about that they were busy trying to fix the problem while their women died out.
I think about how other 50s sci-fi, like when the aliens address us, in a human form, like it's like they're either explaining how they're here to correct our path towards nuclear annihilation, extending to other planets like Day of the Earth Stood Still or Invaders of Mars, like it's like a pacifist message, or it's trying to change our way of life, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And here, it's not really like they adopt a superior tone with the people when they talk to them. It's not like they're trying to show off that they know so much more, or that they're just trying to save themselves. Like it doesn't feel like as extreme a threat, even though I guess it technically is, because they are deceiving humans and trying to force them into unwanted pregnancy. But like the overall aim seems to be a little bit more gray than either the benevolent or the hostile takeovers of other sci-fi films from that period.
That theme and aspect is definitely continued in Showdown at Boot Hill, the other film that's written by Louis Vitez and directed by Gene Fowler Jr. That is like the showdown at Boot Hill at the end is very anticlimactic, and so like the main killing happens in the first 5 minutes, and then the rest is just kind of like, oh look, I just want to take this body, and the townsfolk won't let him because they're pissed at him. And it's just this weird standoff that's kind of, what is actually happening here, and what are these conversations actually pointing to? And it really feels like much like this, like the scriptwriter took a genre and just like smacked it up the side of the head and sent it off kilter a little bit.
So also thinking about how if you read this as a feminist film, how none of the women will help her, that she has to reach out to other men because the women are all so conditioned to want to have a marriage and children that they really ignore any warning signs and will not. There's no sisterhood. I haven't tried to apply the Bechdel test to it, but did they talk about anything other than marriage and men? I'm trying to think if they do.
I don't think so. There's very few conversations that the women have together, and what they do, it's almost all marriage related. There's the moment where I think it's Sam drowns, and I'm guessing that there's at least one unturned man, because there's a man that jumps into the water and tries to save him, and then the doctor accidentally kills him by giving him oxygen. And you get, again, this kind of horror moment. And I think the horror a lot of times has to do with, sleeping and because you've got this great horror moment earlier in the film where Marge is in bed and you cut to these feet going up the stairs, and it's Bill's feet going up the stairs, but you don't really know who it is. It feels almost like there's a stalker in the house kind of a thing. And that ends up being, diffused. But then you've got, after Sam dies, and you've got his wife, his widow now in bed, and you get the door opening and the light comes in as she's trying to sleep, and oh, okay, shoo, it's only Marge. It's like they keep giving us these moments of like, oh, this could be a monster coming in, or it could be, a killer coming in, because yeah, they do have human killers in here as well, or at least that creep with the gangster that we're talking about. After she's done, Marge is done checking in on her friend, it's like then you dissolve to the chief of police or the captain of the police, like right in her face, just be like, Marge, you want to spend the rest of your life in an insane asylum? Like just really gaslighting this poor lady and just, yelling at her. Like, if you go around talking about monsters invading Norrisville, that's where you're going to end up. It's like, it's like, quit spreading the panic. And just the way that he's intensely like honored. It's like, there's no intro to that scene at all. It just like is a real quick dissolve from one to the next, and boom, we are in there, and he's just yelling at her like, hey man, I'm going to lock you up, throw you in an asylum, which was like such the, like obviously they're much more like snake pits at this time, probably are today, but just how awful asylums were. And that was such a, hey, listen, if you don't stand up and correct yourself as a woman, I can get you tossed into this asylum at a drop of a hat.
That's one thing that does tie this film to a lot of the paranoid sci-fi films, whereas rationalization is a way of enforcing the status quo and denying any kind of possibility of difference or change. And also, rationality is a threat, that if you appear irrational, then you can be locked up and disappeared. The dying from oxygen thing is fascinating because that is like the one moment in the film where rationality just shatters. And that's immediately what makes the doctor go like, oh. And he's just like then waiting for that bit of information, which then comes from Marge when she comes to talk to him, that switches him over real quick because he's already had that tangible piece of evidence that says rationality ain't what it used to be.
You were talking too, Bill, about the whole idea of no Confederates for Marge, and that it's one of the few women that she talks to, and I don't think this would pass the Bechdel test. One of the few women she talks to is the operator when she's trying to get Washington, D.C. And the woman operator is not helping her out whatsoever. Sorry, all the circuits are busy. And there's no, isn't this strange? Or, like she is obviously somehow in on it, maybe, or just has been told this is what you say and is following along, just following orders.
Yeah, I mean that feels also like a callback to Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Just like you can't make a call to another unaffected town because the lines of communication are all severed.
All the forms of civilization are useless. Like all the technology is useless. The guns are ineffective. It's only like the primal beast that finally manages to kill one of them, stop them.
Yeah, avenges the little puppy in the basement.
Which is another Wes Craven connection. I was like, yeah, is this where he got Hills Have Eyes Part 2? Prince going after having dog flashbacks and seeking revenge.
Yeah, well, doesn't a dog get killed in He Was a Teenage Werewolf? So it's also like another...
Yeah. There's a dog fighting the werewolf, and the dog gets it in that as well. Clearly, I think that's like the Australian thing, though. I always remember like doing a horror podcast series years ago and doing Australian films. They're like, why does the dog die in all these films? I thought Australians love dogs. I was like, yeah, it's because we love dogs that the dog always gets it, because the line has been crossed. That's when you know the shit hits the fan.
Oh yeah, that's one of those now it's personal moments for Mad Max and the Road Warrior is when that poor dog gets it. I love how eventually they end up getting a lynch mob together to take care of these aliens. And where are you going to recruit people? Well, at the bar, because those are the only people that are still human, are the ones that are still drinking. So let's get an army of drunks and give them shotguns, and let's go out in the forest and try to find these aliens.
That's something they change in the remake, because in this film it's identifying who's had kids, whereas in the remake it is who's still drunk.
That's right. Thank you. It's all the fathers in this one. Okay, I mixed those up.
It's much more emphasized the alcoholic part in the remake than this original. But I love that they really there's saw a bit of writings that are like, oh, they really emphasize that the only real men are the, fertile American males and everything. I was like, yeah, but I feel like they don't really lean into that much after having established it. It feels just like, hey, how do we know? Oh, well, this seems like the way, so let's say it and then just get on with it. But I feel like they do have a bit of a poke at it as a bit of a joke by having the person who instigates this awareness that this is a possibility is a dude coming up being like, she had twins with 2 cigars. And it's like, oh, we're going to push this that little bit further so it's a bit silly.
And that's nice that gets called back to in The Astronaut's Wife as well with the twins.
But it also shows that the military might is not how you solve the problem because they're bulletproof. And I feel like the remake, they aren't bulletproof. If I remember correctly, that they can be shot. Whereas this, it really is down to the man's best friend is mankind's best friend. As far as like pulling the exposed. I don't know what you call them, if those are like external veins or tubes or whatever. But like fatally injuring the alien. It's the dogs that save this.
The remake says, oh, hey, aim for the tubes on their necks. So they like make it explicit that, oh yeah, the bullets don't work on the torso, but they work on the neck. And watching the original after the remake, it was like, well, it does seem like they've got a carapace of some sort on their torso. So it's like maybe that was the case in the original, but it's never made explicit. It seems a bit more ephemeral as to why it's the dogs that able to defeat them and the bullets not. So
I love when they finally do find the ship and there's that device that comes up from the ship that I think is sending out a signal to all of the aliens to be like, hey, we're under attack. It looks like freaking Dr. Seuss designed that machine that comes up with all the horns coming everywhere. It looks like something that would be played in Whoville on Christmas Day. And then you get all of the guys when they go inside and you see, and it kind of doesn't make sense that you only see 5 of these bodies when they have obviously taken over way more than 5, but there are 5, most familiar faces. You've got the police chief, you've got Bill, you've got one of Bill's friends, and then the 2 cops. And I love that they just seem like they're floating there, and the way that they're tied down into those machines and everything. It's such a wonderfully eerie image of these guys just floating above the ground with these ties. It almost looks like they're being tied down, like they would float away if they didn't have these machines below them.
Well, maybe I'm just saying this because it's the same woods that parts of Twin Peaks are shot in, but I did think about the Black Lodge and how the possessed people are kind of like hung in the air like that. And it's probably just a coincidence, but I did think about that, like how the real person is preserved, but the alien doppelganger is out in the world. And it does feel like it points towards things like what they do on Twin Peaks later.
Well, it's almost like Blue Velvet when you see the man in the yellow jacket just hanging out, like standing there in the room after Frank has murdered him. I mean, because we do get, I was saying like you only see 5, but there is another shot where you see 5 more guys. And yeah, the looks like they're just kind of swaying there. And that always reminds me of that man in the yellow coat.
When she sees Alien Bill leave and go into the spaceship and just the shell is there, like are the shells not able to go in and out of the spaceship? Like they don't explain it, but it's such an eerie image that there's just this husk of her husband standing there that I think is more effective than maybe even the rubber suited monster as far as like being an eerie image.
The floating at the end also reminded me when they start pulling the plug on them. It reminded me of the Matrix, and no, not like this. When they start pulling the plug on the Matrix and the way they drop is kind of similar. Not a bit more sudden in the Matrix, but there's, again, that ending is one of the things that feels very modern about this film, that there's so little like fanfare about it. Like it's real. Death is just comes. But when he says like, well, we don't know, maybe there's some kind of feedback, if we pull the plug on them, they'll die. And it's like, well, do we have any other options? It's like, nah, okay. And starts pulling the plug, and then the people are running, and they go, and they're dead. And it's the way it's even shot feels like something from like a World War II film of looking back at your buddies running over the hill, and then bang, and they drop.
And he does a mercy killing. There's the one guy, the cop, who collapses, and yeah, he's struggling. And then you've got Bill turning around and shooting with the laser to disintegrate everything. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Looper, that Rian Johnson film, when the guy's running and his future self is having body parts cut off, and he just starts missing his parts as he's trying to run along. Just this, like, there's an inevitability about it that at that point you sympathize with Bill. And I like that you really get this moment of sympathy with him at the end, where it's just like, listen, I was learning how to love, I'm not a human, but I'm not that bad of an alien kind of a thing. Both sides.
He's never given a moment of like being part of the real strong pushback against the people. Like he's only just part of the team that's being kind of eliminated by the time he even gets there. Like he's not really positioned as an antagonist the way other tellings of the story are.
Yeah, your people have won. That makes you happy, doesn't it? And she's like, doesn't say anything.
Yeah, there's so much in this film where it doesn't tell you why this thing is happening, but it's not a mystery either. Like the thing of him doing the mercy killings. It's like it all has this emotional internal logic that we get enough of that if you're paying attention, it hits pretty hard. And I think that really sort of is why this film, like, it feels so different to a lot of the other films of that time. That it is that starting to seep into postmodern horror and sci-fi where there's more going on than there was at a lot of other the 40s and 50s era stuff.
But it's also more optimistic than the original ending of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or Invaders of Mars ends in a dream. It came from outer space. It's kind of more like, well, they'll be back, but it wasn't our time to really make that contact just yet. There's the films that seem to be like, well, they're trying to communicate with us, but we're still not ready to accept them yet because of our own militaristic kind of impulses. Like, it's not critiquing people's reaction to the aliens the way those films are, but it's also not quite as dark as, almost everybody survives at the end of the day. Like, it's still like they've learned a lesson, whether or not, like, you have no idea like how the men are going to react to the women now that they've gone through that experience. Like, that's left to your imagination, whether or not they'll actually have changed for the better, or even if Bill will be upset that his wife's been sleeping with someone else for over a year. Like, you don't know what the outcome is going to be, but you assume the way it ends that right and might has been restored. Like, it doesn't really leave you with those questions. But if you think about it, there's a lot that could go wrong after the credits roll with that town.
They never were married, actually. So now they're going to have to look into that. So
that's okay. They were sleeping in separate beds anyway. So,
which is funny that it's just such a common occurrence amongst those movies that it doesn't even register sometimes now, where I'm just like, oh yeah, separate beds, no big deal. But it's like, yeah, that's kind of a big deal. Don't forget about that.
It's like, hey doctor, is there something wrong with my insides that I can't have kids? Have you tried actually sleeping together yet?
Sleep together? Like, just sleep?
But the implication is that they are sleeping together, and I don't know that there's a lot of 50s sci-fi films that really even hint at that. I know that they have to be kind of playing it safe, for censorship reasons. But I think that, that is one also thing that keeps it a little bit more modern than some of the other ones where you just assume that everybody is sexually inexperienced in those stories, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers and the others. They're chaste relationships. They might flirt heavily, but you don't get the impression they're actually going to sleep together. Whereas this is explicit.
Having that sex hygiene film in the background of his filmography does feel significant here because of that. Like, he's a filmmaker who has, at one point, within the confines of official military acceptance, been able to engage with that kind of ideas in media. And he actually there's another film he made as part of his military service that he was an editor on that he won an Oscar for, called Seeds of Destiny, which was post-war actually, and was about the refugee situation and the fallout from the war, of how many people were left homeless and ravaged and destroyed. And thinking now, like, that is also what this film is dealing with. Like, it's dealing with refugees from mass destruction and how they're trying to deal with that, which is also fascinating.
Did Fowler work on John Huston's Let There Be Light, that film about...
I think it was just Sex Hygiene and Seeds of Destiny that he was involved in.
No, he was. Gene Fowler Jr. was one of the editors on Let There Be Light.
Oh, there you go.
But that's also dealing with the trauma of, to the degree that it was like suppressed by the government. But just that idea of the effects of war on men, because that's something I find fascinating about the the whole explosion of suburbia in this period where this film is set is all those provisions to keep soldiers from rebelling the way they did at the end of World War I, as far as like having things like the GI Bill put in place so that when all these people came back from overseas, they weren't going to riot, that they, were treated so badly compared to the veterans of World War I, that they have all these incentives built in so that, the suburban idea like really flourishes in the wake of World War II because of those safeguards against rebellion. But yeah, the whole idea of the traumatized soldier, I just think it's something I never thought about with this film until kind of reading some of the essays in preparation for this conversation, and how I think that's a real interesting. I don't know how much of it was articulated as they were creating it, but it's a fun way to interpret it for sure.
I would be pretty comfortable saying I reckon it was front and center of Fowler's mind, knowing that he had worked on those World War II films, that he had been, in being in the media departments of the military means he has access to a lot more materials that aren't otherwise seen by a lot of people in the army, a lot of suppressed materials. Thinking about like I Was a Teenage Werewolf, like it's real easy to read I Was a Teenage Werewolf as a parable about going into the military, where the school is the military organization, the doctor who is treating his issues in order to make him into a better student, more able to do his tasks. And the fallout of that is somebody who occasionally explodes. But also Showdown at Boot Hill, like the instigating kind of thing in the background of that is like Charles Bronson is a short guy who everybody looks down on, and he doesn't get treated well, and he's got nothing, he's not good enough at anything other than shooting, so he goes and becomes a US Marshal and a bounty hunter. And it's like, again, that's like, well, there's no jobs in the town, or go join the military, and you end up going off and collecting just like years and years and years of trauma, and then you try to unpick it and everything's exploding around you because all you know how to do is kill. It's like, oh yeah, no, Fowler was making films about traumatized war veterans.
I Was a Teenage Werewolf is, the whole, the gender aspects of that is a whole other conversation between like having no mother in the home. All the teachers at his school are women.
But there's also that amazing thing, like there's only two people killed in that, and one's a man and one's a woman, and the teenage boy and a teenage girl. The teenage boy is in a Red Riding Hood situation, walking home through the dark woods and screaming like, it's very feminized. And then the young woman is like in her safe space in the gym class at school and feels comfortable and in control, and him violating her space. Like, yeah, Fowler is playing with all of this stuff through all of the films, like very aware.
So let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll be right back after these brief messages.
Matt from Viva again.
And Emily, looking for something superior to streaming? A place with more than 10 times the selection available on literally all of the streaming services combined?
Check out Scarecrow Video's Rent by Mail service. Select from an unparalleled collection of over 155,000 films and get Blu-rays, 4Ks, and DVDs delivered directly to your door.
Get in on it now at scarecrowvideo.org and rediscover the wonders of physical media.
Tonight, United Paramount Network is proud to present the premiere of UPN's Thursday Night at the Movies. I love you. A UPN world premiere thriller. Once they said, I do, it seemed like he was from another planet. He was.
You are carrying our only hope for the future.
Talk about a honeymoon being over. And now the Sentinel's Richard Burton, Melrose Place's Susan Walters. I Married a Monster on the UPN Thursday Night at the Movies.
Preservation of the species, it works both ways.
All right, we are back, and we are talking about I Married a Monster from Outer Space, but let's talk about the inevitable remake, which dropped the From Outer Space and just said I Married a Monster. From 1998, it was a UPN original movie. I absolutely had the best time watching this movie because the version I watched was taped off of television, so you got all those sweet 1998 commercials. That was probably my favorite part of this because I had seen this before. This was directed by Nancy Malone with the screenwriting credit for Dwayne Poole. It's got Richard Burgi. He was from The Sentinel playing this. He kind of reminds me
Hostel
of...
Part 2. I love him in Hostel Part 2 as one of the like creep Americans paying to kill somebody.
He plays a creep really well. And then we've got Susan Walters as our main character here, called Kelly. He's called Nick. The choice that he makes as an actor, or maybe that he was directed to do, to just play an alien more than any alien, like, you can't be around this guy unless this is just the way that men were in 1998, but just he is the weirdest guy ever, and he is much more he takes everything from television. Like, we've seen characters like this. I mean, he's almost like the Chauncey Gardner of monster movies. Or, like there's PK, the Indian film, and just all of these characters where they'll watch television and get phrases off of that. And, at one point, somebody says something about news, and he goes, news at 11, and just, it's very strange. He even watches, of course, clips from the original film on television, but really it's a lot more of like, melodramas and learning how to love people, love his wife through the magic of television. I don't have a ton to say about this one, even though it is a very interesting update to it. We've got more dogs and more dog death, and some the creatures in this. Holy shit! This is 1998 CG, and boy oh boy, can you tell the budget limitations with this.
I gotta say, before we move on, like watching the TV thing, like there was not a lot to recommend about this film when you really boil it down. But that scene where all of the dudes are in the bar just watching some black and white Lifetime movies so intensely instead of sports while the bartender's getting annoyed was just like stunning. No notes, like perfect. Like he nailed that. That was incredible. Like the most melodramatic, Circean kind of Lifetime movie on the TV, and so good.
You think about how TV is used in All That Heaven Allows, and it's like shown as like the last gasp of entertainment for lonely unmarried women. It's like brought into the house like a curse by her children, like, because it's like, oh, you're not going to ever have a lover again because you're too old now. So here's a TV just to numb your brain. Like it's TV is portrayed so negatively by films in the 50s because it's the competition for free. So it's funny that here it plays such a big part as like the way aliens learn about people, and that feels like, I forget if like Twilight Zone movie or like it feels like that.
There's Explorers.
Yeah, Explorers. That's what it was. Yeah, like I knew it was some Joe Dante thing, but like yeah, it feels like that's an idea I've seen before. The way that he learns the wrong lessons from like a kind of a rough sex scene on his honeymoon is like a bizarre kind of idea. The one thing I will say in its defense, which I agree with every criticism of it, the one scene I thought was maybe an improvement was the scene where the female friend who's married to this, I forget if Sam has the same name in this, but when she's rocking the boat, and she's literally rocking the boat in this version to the point where her being playful ends up killing her husband. And because she doesn't have a context for why that's happening, it feels so sad that what she thought was innocent actually brought about like the death of her husband. And it's not like they linger on the pain, but it feels like it's played more real than how things unfold in the Fowler version. Like that's the one scene I thought like, okay, well that's actually giving a little bit more depth to it than the original. But otherwise, yeah, it feels like compared to remakes of Invasion of the Body Snatchers or even the remake of Invaders from Mars, it feels like it's knowingly telling you that it's a remake of a 50s sci-fi film. Like it's not, it doesn't feel like as heavy, it doesn't feel like as seriously rendered. Like it feels like it knows that it's doing a remake of I Married a Monster from Outer Space, and it's only really thinking about an audience that's coming to it with a little bit more nostalgia than I think, like, say, the Philip Kaufman version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers is trying to be a serious science fiction movie. Like, this doesn't feel like it has that same kind of weight behind it.
If I had watched this remake first, I probably would never have watched the original because I would think it's exactly what you think a 50s sci-fi film called I Married a Monster from Outer Space is. Like this 90s film in that 50s jag that we were in the 90s of remaking everything like 50s and bringing back all this stuff from that era, and it's like they turn it into such a 1950s sci-fi B film. Like they make it even more what you think the original will be, and there's almost nothing of everything we've talked about. There's no subtlety. It's what 12 minutes longer than the original, and yet has so much less content. There's so much more of the 50s filler that you expect in a 50s sci-fi film. And you also get a whole chunk before that introduces the characters and sets up who they are and everything, and adds nothing to the film, and ridiculously significantly reduces a lot of the ambiguous meaning that we've been talking about.
Yeah, you get so much before they get married, and so you actually get to see the Bill type character, Nick, as a regular person. So then when it's the wedding and he's just standing there like a lump and has no idea to say I do. Yes, I understand wedding jitters, but he is such a different person. That's the thing about the original, is that we don't really know him very well. So in the way that Tryon plays him, it seems a lot more like a normal human being after he gets changed into an alien. But then again, we do have a year gap with that. But here, seeing the wedding, seeing just how he doesn't even know how to react to anything, you're just, red flags should be going off, like crazy.
Yeah, the original film sets up nothing of how they might have learnt about us, and yet he seems to relatively like seeing in pretty okay. And in this, they're like, oh no, he's been watching TV, so they know stuff, and then he's just like completely lost to the point where everyone should be like, have you had a stroke? Are you okay? But like, I was just like watching this being like, oh man, this is so absolutely directed by a woman who read Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Like, this is the Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus remake. I married a monster from outer space. And it's not even that it's painful. It just happens at you. And I had such a different experience than you guys because of the adverts. Because the adverts so added to the experience, but it was just like cult America blasting at me, cranked up to 11, and they were indistinguishable. The only way that I knew that it was an advert some of the times was that it had text on the screen and the editing was faster. Otherwise, the way that they were shot and the music and the acting was all identical, and it was just like, I think it would be coming back to the film because it would be some like setting up a story and a narrative, and then like, oh no, they're selling me Robitussin from Dr. Mum. And it was this psychic assault that was incredible. Like, it worked so well, this demented piece of American ideological bullshit. And I really hope that that's the only version that ever continues to exist in the world. Because like, you guys are used to that kind of advertising. And I'm like, there was maybe one or two in there that I was like, oh, I think these did get ported over to Australia. Like the M&M one was kind of familiar. But like, the vast majority of them were just like, and then, the whiplash from like then it was like, the New England adverts. And there was the thing about the new millennium seminars with the religious dude that went from like outer space to the Bible. And it was just like, this is too much. I can't deal with this. I mean, like, I think it took me like 3 hours to watch it because I kept having to be just like, pause, go and make myself a cup of tea and just have a breather for a second. Because then you come back to the show itself and it'd be these insane CGI effects and this bananas overacting and underacting at the same time, and just like crazy 90s-ness just being like coming in like left and right punches. And I was like, oh man, I had a hell of experience, but my God, it was also a void.
Those commercials for the truth of the new millennium with the Bible and everything, those were amazing. Yeah, those really, it did feel like part of the program a lot of times. But going back and seeing like nicotine patch commercials and Hot Pockets toaster pizza pop-up type of things, I mean, it was so quaint for me. I mean, it was only 28 years ago, but even just seeing like an original "You Better Not Lay a Finger on My Butterfinger" Simpsons commercial, I was like, oh yeah, I remember these days. This was so
and the film felt like it was a Nickelodeon film. It was like something like Alex Mack or something like that was the main one that we had on TV when I was a kid.
And now I have to go track down every episode of Mercy Point because it was a hospital in space.
What the hell was that? I was reading Starlog back in the day in Fangoria, and I'm just like, what is this? I never heard of this. I mentioned the score. Jesus Christ. It was so canned and so just it was the opposite of the other film where that used silence so beautifully. This was just this canned 90s music like a Nickelodeon show. And then it turns out the composer is David Shire, who scored like Fincher's Zodiac and things like All the President's Men and The Taking of Pelham 123, The Conversation. And I'm like, bro, look, clearly he had some vet bills or something. I don't know. Oh, but did you see who produced it? It only had one producer on it. It was Stu Seagal. And I was just like, that name sounds vaguely familiar. He's a porno director and roughy exploitation horror film director. He directed Drive-In Massacre and Marilyn Chambers' Insatiable 1 and 2 are probably the two most famous. And he did like Dirty Dolls and Teenage Jailbait. And this was like one of his few... He outside of his pornos and such, he didn't produce a whole lot of other things, which was real interesting because I would have sworn that this was part of that Corman cycle because there were quite a few remake of 50s sci-fi films in the 90s, and it seems like he just managed to pick up the rights to this one and was just trying to jump on the bandwagon, and this is kind of a one and done deal.
It's interesting that a roughy sex type scene would then be brought into the honeymoon sequence as like as the wrong lesson to learn for men.
I love how it also at the beginning makes so much of the point of like, oh, it's spring and the weather is beautiful and this strange thunderstorm is so unusual and passing. And then that night they're having sexy times beside a roaring fire. Why is the fire? What is happening? Oh man, they were leaning into some cliches here. It was kind of glorious.
The director of this was an actress primarily, but then she definitely got into making movies around, I think, 81. And then it's funny to look at some of the other things that she had done over the years. So we talked about Starman earlier. She did an episode of Starman. She also was directing episodes of Star Trek Voyager, which was interesting, at least 2 episodes of that. And yeah, then it was like she was working for UPN after that because she was also doing Dawson's Creek. Also, the TV series The Guardian. Do you guys remember that one? So it was another one where I was just like, oh yeah, I remember this thing when it was on. That was Simon Baker show. So classic Australian actor Simon Baker. Yeah,
no relation to the Friedkin movie where the woman makes love to the tree, right?
No, unfortunately.
I was gonna say that suggests a show waiting to be made.
Oh yeah, the TV version of that movie would be fantastic.
Good sitcom.
I saw that the screenwriter for the remake is one of those guys who has the mix of Christmas Hallmark films and horror films.
Yeah, he knows how to make some money.
Yeah, I haven't seen some of these, but like, Return to the Batcave, Flintstone Christmas, like Next Stop Christmas, Timeless Christmas, a Royal Albert Affair. Although there is one in here, The Face, or Face to Die For, which is directed by Jack Bender, who did Midnight Hour and Child's Play 3 that I've been wanting to see. But otherwise, I think this might be the only film of his I check out other than that.
I really like the character actor Tim DeZarn, who plays the, I guess he's a drunk in this movie, Bud Riley. He seems almost homeless at times. He just seems really kind of messed up.
I was trying to make a note of that, and I'm just like, I don't even know how to politely refer to this kind of person in stereotype in film anymore. A bit touched in the head. It was pretty bad. He was doing a great job of it, but it was just like it felt like they had 3 stereotypes that they all crammed together into one. But then when he gets taken over, he's just fine.
Old Tom knows how to spell aliens, Moon.
But Richard Hurd as well. Is Richard Hurd who plays the uncle doctor in this?
Yeah, there were a lot of Seinfeld actors in this one for sure. Like having Barney Martin as the bartender for this one, and I was just like, oh, there's Jerry's dad. Okay, he's always got that great voice, and he's so not happy having all these guys hanging out at his bar not drinking anything. I mean, he's no slapsy Maxie, but he's there. So
I was so convinced that it was that the best friend, the Sam guy, was Gil Bellows with the rough VHS rip. And I was like, wait, no, he looks like Gil Bellows now, so it can't be him. He definitely didn't have the charisma of the original Sam, unfortunately. So yeah, his death scene was a more meaningful, but I was more happy to see him go than in the original, where I was like, oh, I kind of like Sam.
I was laughing quite a bit at, well, one, we were talking about the commercials, that you would get the here's the break part, and it would always be stuff that has yet to happen. So it's like, oh, stay tuned, this is coming up, but the first one of those that happens, it's right after we see him mowing the lawn, and he's mowing a crop circle in the lawn. And then, of course, I had just seen Disclosure Day, where it's like, oh, hey, you've had alien encounters, and the grass starts to lay down and makes a fucking crop circle. I was just like, oh boy. I don't know if either of these movies handled that very well at all.
Man, I forgot about that. I think that my brain just couldn't even take that in, because it's so just like, wait, what? Yeah, I mean, one of the adverts was for the video release of the X-Files movie, the original one, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a film made in the shadow of the X-Files, like, and a bit of fire in the sky there too, with her alien abduction scene, which is something that the original doesn't have at all. Like, there's no alien abduction for Marge, whereas this, she is actually abducted and impregnated. So definitely trying to ride those.
Unsuccessfully, though, which you wouldn't get the unsuccessful pregnancy. Well, I'm talking about the first one.
The first one. Yeah, that was a solid bit of body horror that kind of came out of nowhere for a Nickelodeon story. A lot of excellent use of the color purple, though, in those the goo and the CGI. If you're a fan of the color purple doing weird stuff, then
yeah, those aliens, I mean, God, they were rough with the big, like, insect legs and everything. I know they were trying to make them look even more alien than the originals, but man, oh man, they looked like they had escaped from the Lawnmower Man.
It is beautiful. Like, I loved them, but they didn't work for this film. They didn't add anything or help it in any way, but just taking them out on their own as a weird piece of, like, cinema art history, they do have a vibe that I did quite enjoy. But yeah, there was, that's the thing. It was like all of the parts of this film that on their own were like, cool, but all together it was just like, oh, fuck off.
Houston, permission to rotate the panel 48 degrees, over. Roger.
At 2:36 p.m., 125 miles above Earth, shuttle astronaut Spencer Armacost suddenly lost contact.
What the hell is that?
I'm Sherman Reese from NASA. It's about your husband.
What happened?
There was an explosion. We lost contact for about 2 minutes.
Chill. What happened up there?
Everything shut down. No sound, but something loud. And then I felt warmth. It was the warmth of you.
To most, he seemed the same. But to his wife, he had become something not of this world.
Chill.
Ah, yes. See this here?
What is it?
2 heartbeats. It's twins, Mrs. Armacost. It's twins.
Everything's gonna be just fine.
Now,
What happened during those 2
There was
minutes?
an accident. There was an explosion.
No!
she's beginning to fear that the lives inside her aren't human. And he will stop at nothing to protect them.
If you are watching this tape, Mrs. Armacost, I'm probably dead. He's not your husband anymore.
Where you gonna go, honey? Where you gonna go?
What's happening?
I love you, Jillian.
No, you don't.
Johnny Depp, Charlize Theron, the astronaut's wife.
Everything I see, you see. Everything you think, I know.
So I wanted to also talk about The Astronaut's Wife, which is not an official remake of I Married a Monster from Outer Space, or as I kept trying to say, So I Married a Monster from Outer Space, because I kept getting So I Married an Axe Murderer mixed up in there. I saw Astronaut's Wife theatrically when it was out, and there was a point in Johnny Depp's career, he might still be in that point, where it was just the roles that he was playing, I was just not a fan of whatsoever. And I probably saw this more as a Johnny Depp film at the time rather than a Charlize Theron fan, because I was not that familiar with her work. It was interesting, like between this and The Devil's Advocate, it felt like those two movies are very married together, where it's my husband, something's going on with my husband, and I don't know exactly what it is. Is he made a deal with the devil, or is he possessed by aliens? And she just seems to be playing the same character in both. I found it very interesting that she and Johnny Depp are almost twins in this movie. They both have these short blonde haircuts. Like, seeing Johnny Depp with much more light brown hair than he usually has was unusual. Seeing Nick Cassavetes as his buddy was unusual as well. Like his, I guess it'd be his co-pilot, because he's an astronaut and out into space he goes and comes back possessed with some sort of creature inside of him. And then it's all about, let's get you pregnant. And yeah, I definitely was seeing this for the Rosemary's Baby episode, just because when he's having sex with her, it really feels like Rosemary's Baby. I mean, he feels he's as creepy as Guy, maybe even creepier. But I have to say, I don't like this movie whatsoever. I ended up, this was probably my third time trying to watch it, and after a while I just had to turn it off because I was just so sick of it. I just did not care for this one whatsoever, and I'm curious what you guys think of The Astronaut's Wife.
I hadn't seen this since it opened in 99. I saw it in the theater as well. I think at the time that it came out, I still hadn't fallen out of love with Johnny Depp, like, as an actor. Like, I think of 90s Johnny Depp as, like, doing a lot of interesting, kind of quirky characters. It's the era of Ed Wood and Gilbert Grape and Crybaby and Arizona Dream. So I wasn't really turning on Johnny Depp as an actor the way I might later on, as far as kind of the characters he chooses to play. But I think I went into it as a hardcore Tom Noonan fan, because I had worked for Tom Noonan between when The Wife came out and when this came out, as a just putting up flyers for one of his plays. Like, I knew him kind of for a tiny bit, but like, this was like the first thing he made after that. Like, I had kind of known him, so I was just excited to see Tom Noonan in a movie on the big screen. And so he's only in it kind of a little bit, but I was there for Tom Noonan, and at the time, and Charlize Theron, I only knew as the Anita Ekberg type character in Celebrity, the Woody Allen film. So I didn't see That Thing You Do or Devil's Advocate until after this. So I only knew her from just being this attractive woman in the Woody Allen movie, like as an object in that movie. She's not really much of a character in it. So I only come to know her as a comedian and all the things she can do later. So I only really know her as like someone that's being cast for looks when I go see this movie in the theater. And I think because of the pixie haircut, I'm thinking Rosemary's Baby 100%. I didn't even really connect it to I Married a Monster until we started prepping for them. Oh yeah, I guess it is taking a lot from that. And Johnny Depp also did a Polanski film that year, because I think I saw Ninth Gate in the theater that year too. I remember finding it really kind of just turgid and bland, and like being very disappointing when I saw it. And it was a real struggle to finish it this time, because I just felt like there's not any part of it where it really seems to come to life. But as a late 90s mid-budget New Line movie, I do find it interesting now as a time capsule in a way that I didn't before. Like, I think it has a slickness and a sleekness to it that is kind of interesting, and you don't really see movies quite at the scale that often anymore, it feels like. And it is trying to be a real movie. Like, it's not camp the way I Married a Monster for TV is. Like, it's trying to be as seriously rendered as Rosemary's Baby. It's not a B movie. I did think it was odd that was it the Sid Vicious version of My Way is used so prominently. I'm like, oh, I guess that is that point in where like it's post Nirvana and like we're trying to bring punk into things like this. But like, I think this is maybe hurt by the fact that Johnny Depp's character is like so unpleasant and so prominent throughout it that it makes it kind of a less fun movie to watch than I Married a Monster from Outer Space, where you kind of like Bill at times. Like you don't really know what Johnny Depp's character's ultimate mission is other than to force this woman into having his twins. Like, I don't know that the agenda of the aliens is quite spelled out. Thinking about it as a 90s film, at the age that I saw it, it's post-Cold War, it's pre-war on terror, it's Clinton era. There are military conflicts in those years like Bosnia and such that like you would hear about. And there were things like the World Trade Center bombing or David Koresh. Like there's violent things that happen in those years. It's pre-Columbine, I think, or it's around that same time. But it's like not like we're really engaged in some obvious military component. So that like when he's using these powers for collaborating with like the defense industry, and she questions like, who are we even fighting with? Like that, as at that age, I think I would have had like that same question. Like, what is this even? Have we maybe moved past the point where the military is really quite such a concern? And that was also me, like in like early 20s, like, so it's a naivete, but like, it's not really got the same Cold War paranoia as the original film. And it feels like if it's talking about anything, it's talking about abortion and being forced to carry to term a pregnancy that you don't want. Even more explicitly than the remake of I Married a Monster. Like, it seems to be like that's what it's about. And the man's aggression towards stopping the woman from carrying through with this. So I think if there's a reason for them to tackle the similar themes, I think they're trying to make it topical that way. Like, that's the period where they're trying to pass these, what is the term? Like, partial birth abortion. So it's,
now they'll say insane things like, oh yeah, the woman carried the baby for 9 months and then it was aborted. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
You can be 39 weeks pregnant, walk in and say, I'd like an abortion. And everybody's going to say, sure.
It's still not quite willing to totally piss off the pro-life audience, but it's still trying to tackle that theme. So it's having it both ways, or at least attempting to, for my money. So it kind of feels like it's trying to be topical but play it safe. So that's kind of my takeaway with, like, it's not a film I'm in a hurry to ever really revisit, but it's not. But I'm glad that I saw it for this, because it is interesting to see how those themes could be carried over into that time period and whether or not that poses problems for telling that story.
I remember renting this on video when it came out, an overnight rental, and watching it with my dad. My only vague memory is finding it distastefully exploitative. And other than that, it left such a bad taste in my mouth that when like Mike mentioned about it in relation to this, it was just like, man, I will watch a lot of stuff for you, Mike. And this is one of those points where I draw a line in the sand and go, nah. I don't remember why, but it was just rubbing me so much the wrong way when I saw it that I was like, nah, my life's too short. And what you're talking about is like, I'm getting an inkling of why I possibly did that, of that real like centrist kind of like trying to have its cake and eat it bullshit. Really pisses me off when it's like actually a filthy exploitation film and it's not honest enough to engage with that. Like, looking at it now, I'm just like, oh, Boy Species. And it's like revisiting Species a couple of years ago was like, man, this film is a gnarly, not good, hot mess, but my God, is it committed to being what it is? And I really like respect that. And it still like has some kick because of that. And it's just like, oh no, if the Astronaut wife is doing Boy Species, but like, doesn't, some dude writing and directing it who's like only other things is like writing one of the shitty Candyman sequels. Yeah, I'm glad I made the call, but I also just looking at it here at Letterboxd and seeing one of the people I follow who said in their first line of their review, if Extra was really boring. And I'm like, yeah, actually, let's just watch Extra again instead.
In both of the previous movies, I'm trying to remember if in the 98, if there was I think there might have been one person of color. There might have been an Asian person somewhere in town, but it's like there's no real prominent people of color. And when it comes to the astronaut's wife, we've got Joe Morton coming in. And Joe Morton he knows the truth. He's the only one who knows the truth. And of course, he gets terminated by NASA. So it's this, black mark against his record. He's the one that is telling Charlize Theron, listen, what's going on with your husband? Have you noticed any changes in behavior? And he is the one that knows everything before she does. So it's like the agency that we had Marge have in the original, where she's figuring everything out, that's taken away from her. Even Charlize Theron's character is having all of these dreams and sees herself, dead with a radio because that's how her friend killed herself. And, she's seen the Nick Cassavetes character go nuts and everything. But Morton is the truth teller, and he's the one that stops her at a toy store and is just like, hey, have you noticed this stuff going on? And then when she finds out that he's been fired, she's like, yeah, no, you're crazy. I gotta go. And just completely discounts him. But it's like, oh, this is the only prominent black character in any of these movies. And he's seen as being this unreliable person until he's not. But then even then, he's pretty powerless when it comes to what goes on in this movie.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Like, he's the brother from another planet, so you would think he would know about extraterrestrials. But yeah, I guess they are trying to make a commentary that the two people that won't be believed by this white male power establishment are a person of color and a woman. So I guess they lay that on not so thick as far as why? That's up for the viewer to decode. It's not like they have the men saying, even prejudiced things or anything like overtly. But yeah, no, I think that's intentional in the casting.
All of the great paranoia that's in Rosemary's Baby is just so wasted here. They are so going for Rosemary's Baby. The apartment and everything, and just, this crazy, I don't know how much astronauts make, but her apartment is probably one of the biggest apartments I've ever seen in my life.
I think that's a real problem when you get a young filmmaker who's obsessed with a certain classic film and they're making something because of that previous film without having it connected to any kind of tangible experience in the present timeline. And that's just something from what I remember of Astronaut's Wife, and what you're talking about is like what it feels like. It's like, this is an ego trip film where you're like, want to remake this film that you adore and try and have it be like meaningful and such, but you don't actually understand what it was connecting to. So you aren't able to connect that into something in the contemporary experience. And so it just ends up coming off as like a trashy exploitation has no soul.
It doesn't need necessarily like guys in rubber suits, but it doesn't have any of the visceral kick of a proper exploitation movie. It's like it's 99% just people talking in rooms. It's not kind of held back by cheesy special effects like the TV version of but it's also there's not a whole lot that's visually interesting about it. Like, it's stylishly showing conversation scenes, but that's nearly all that it is. And I think that something like Rosemary's Baby has, beyond just more interesting kind of ideas and music and such, but it just feels more cinematic, I guess. And that's kind of like maybe I was like a meaningless term sometimes, but there's just not a lot that's visually memorable about it, like as storytelling compared to Polanski, or even compared to the Fowler film. Where there's really a lot of visually interesting things happening with like very little money. Like this, I don't know where all the money went other than maybe paying the actors, because I can't really see what they're spending it on. It's not really that, like, there's not much of a spectacle component to it for a science fiction thriller.
No, the most spectacle you get is at the end, and spoilers for The Astronaut's Wife, at the end when they kind of call back to her friend dying with the radio in the bath or the shower, and you see her and the water is pouring out, and it's like, oh geez, what's going to happen? Is she going to kill herself? It's like, no, she actually started the bath upstairs and all the water's pouring down on Johnny Depp, and then she's the one in control, like plugging in the radio kind of thing, and you get all of the light bulbs. I don't know why they have lighting like this in this house, but just all the light bulbs behind her start going off, and I'm like, This is their idea of a really spectacular shot. It's like, oh, okay. And yeah, you got the whole thing of, finally seeing the alien, I guess, and it just looks like a big old pile of goo. I mean, it's just, again, it's almost like a abyss type alien where it's like clear and trying to possess her and everything. And so it's like the alien ends up winning. After all of these movies, the alien is the winner because then we get to see her twins at the end. Because I was trying to think, which is nice, the twins calling back to I Married a Monster from Outer Space. I kept thinking when I was rewatching this, I was like, is this a dream? Does she wake up at the end and it's a dream and he hasn't even gone into space yet? Like what? And then I had to, go back and rewatch the end again and be like, oh no. Okay. This is her reality. This is supposed to really have happened. She ends up with another astronaut, it looks like, at the end. And now she's got her long hair. She's been, normalized and everything, heterosexualized. And now she's got her new hubby and everything and her special alien children. It's like, okay. Like when the guy's like, what do you think they're going to be when they grow up? It's like, give them time. It's their first day of school. And then that little look that they exchange where it's like, all right, these creatures are going to become astronauts just like their dad.
Yeah, I mean, if it hadn't been twins, it would have felt even more like an occult horror movie, like The Omen, as far as like, or Village of the Damned kind of feel a little bit like, but it feels like, it does feel like closer to that concept of the Antichrist than an alien invasion movie because of the scale of it. But the fact that it's twins kind of complicates that reading of it. But that's the vibe you get more so than the other body snatcher type movies.
Have we had any films like these recently? I haven't been watching a lot of contemporary stuff in the last couple of years, so my finger's not on the pulse enough to...
What was that 2017 film Life with, was it Ryan Reynolds, where they go out into space?
That was more of an alien kind of thing. It wasn't as heavily on this sort of like suburban marital children kind of horror stuff. It's like, it's definitely there in the original. I Married a Monster from Outer Space, but watching the remake and how much the remake was like, oh, this could be made as like a right-wing spoof film now, where it's like, oh, the men are turning into soy boys and drinking soy lattes, and it felt so ripe for that kind of remake now that I'm a little bit surprised that somebody hasn't done something with it recently.
Yeah, there have been a few forced pregnancy type movies in the Omen vein. I think, was it Immaculate? Was that recently? Or yeah, and then the Omen prequel, but more like in the occult horror vein. I can't remember a sci-fi horror movie like I Married a Monster from Outer Space.
Definitely skewing towards more the abortion themed stuff, which is not even present in the original. Whereas it doesn't, nothing so much on that focusing on the marital and the gender relationship part.
Nothing really jumps out at me as far as that goes, and I'm trying to think, especially just around the forced pregnancy, carrying to term kind of stuff, because it does feel like that's obviously still very much an issue right now. And if anything, I would think that there are some Christian films that are like that.
Probably part of the reason for that is so much of the very feminist, proactive women lead strain that has been exploding through horror cinema and thriller cinema is probably what, like something like I Married a Monster from Outer Space is probably a little bit, it's not as active enough for that kind. What the way that is manifesting now is very explosive and very active in the women's role. And it brought to mind something like Ready or Not, where it's the woman marrying into the Satanist family, which is again kind of overlapping with the Rosemary's Baby like strand. And, not knowing who you're marrying and things like that. That feels like that's the way that it's kind of manifesting now, is more in horror and more leaning back towards that Rosemary's Baby Satanist, occult and cultist kind of groups. So it's obviously ties into, marrying someone, finding out their family's MAGA and such.
There was a psychological horror film called Grace, where it's like a woman's forced, or she chooses to carry a baby to term only, and they say that the baby's stillborn, but then I guess the baby is born and has a taste for blood.
That's what's his name. He's been doing really interesting
I
documentaries
love what's
recently.
his name. Yeah, he's great. I celebrate his whole catalog.
He did the one about the Killdozer dude.
Paul Salette.
Yeah, Paul Salette. Yeah, his first film was Grace, which was not a very good film, but I love what he's been doing since then. God, what was the name of his Killdozer film? That's
Tread.
Have you seen that?
I
Tread.
saw the trailer for that and I was like, ooh, sign me up. And then I completely forgot about it.
It's so good. I've seen it like 3 times and it gets better each time. He gets to have his cake and eat it for making a film about Killdozer dude. It's really, really good. It's a documentary where he gets to do the recreations as well. So it's like, yeah, you get to have fun, like destroying the tower, but also really drive home the point of how messed up this is and what's wrong with people. And actually, now that I think of it, Tread would actually make a fascinating double with I Married a Monster from Outer Space. Yeah, perhaps he's a fan of that film as well, because I feel like it's definitely in the DNA of some of his film of like, what's wrong with men and why do they bring it home?
When I'm watching this again, I was thinking about things like Face Off, where like a woman be married to someone that appears to be her husband but is not, and the horror of that, or thrillers like The Stepfather, like things of that vein, where it's like people marrying under false impression of who that their partner is, and then the horror of that, revelation. But not so much coming. I mean, it seems like once they have the ability to handle the pregnancy theme, they kind of shift into something that is less focused on the gender dynamic than on the notion of the pregnancy being the problem. Other than in thrillers where it's the domestic thriller where there's no fantasy element and it's just like they've married a stranger for one reason or another. But I can't think of a recent film that I've seen that taps into that, but I'm sure somebody out there is making that film. I just haven't seen it.
There's so many films that would go down that path are really restricted by the hang-ups and the like ideological structures that they're trapped in. Like, instead of being so ambiguous and open in how it's approaching the matters, like I Married a Monster from Outer Space is, you get the things, like the home is this sacred place and the alien or, unknown man entering it is threatening that. And it's like there's never a sense of there is no home in I Married a Monster from Outer Space. It's just a building. And everything afterwards so obsessed with those ideas that it can't be more than that.
I also don't know, I mean, maybe I'm naive in thinking this, but I don't know if it's as common for gay men to have to stay closeted and married to women, that in a way that like would make the plot of the original film such a compelling metaphor. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's still cases of that, but I don't know that it's, I can't see them tackling that theme as a relatable theme now, but maybe I'm naive in thinking that, but I just see, it feels like we've made so much social progress since the 50s that it just feels like that metaphor wouldn't make sense to a lot of people now.
I don't know. Given how many MAGA folks in positions of power are getting revealed to be other than what they present themselves as, I think there's possible strain still there.
And entertainers that don't want to lose part of that audience do, live closeted lives. Like, I know that there's still closeted gay people, but I think that it would surprise me if that story was told as, for whatever reason. I can't remember the last time somebody tackled that theme, and maybe I'm just not thinking of an obvious example of that. But
maybe that film Him, for some reason that pops into my head. I didn't see it though, but it's about sports, about masculinity in sports. That might have something sort of related to that. But yeah, no, you are right that it's not. It definitely, at least for the time being in the recent history, it's not as applicable.
Ben, I'm right there with you when it comes to like the hidden MAGA kind of stuff, and not just the closeted homosexuality, but the idea of when you're having a conversation with somebody and then they say something that's absolutely insane and you're just like, oh, Oh, I didn't realize that you were MAGA. It's like talking with a guy a few years ago, and he was just like, oh yeah, I had COVID, but then luckily my Invermedicine or whatever, Invermectin, the horse paste, it was like, yeah, luckily that came in, and I was able to knock that out. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, you're nuts. Okay,
You're one of them.
Okay, yeah, and it's just like you start to back away slowly, and you're just like, nah, I don't want to talk with this person anymore, because it's almost like, does it spread? Is it like a virus that you could catch MAGA? I hope not. So just, get me away from that. Because can you imagine, like, if you go down and you live in Florida, it's probably like all of your neighbors, you're surrounded.
Yeah, we're definitely in a time period where the kind of themes of these films has come full circle again. It's like everything old is new again. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see some kind of resurgence.
Conspiracy and horror is certainly never going to go away. I mean, you think about things like folk horror or Get Out or whatever you want to like, whatever you want to point to, almost, Midsummer, almost everything.
Well, Rosemary's Baby again, where it's a bunch of Satanists living in New York.
Yeah, so much of it is still rooted in conspiracy. And there's still, gender commentary and such in contemporary horror. So there's still room for that kind of film. And there's certainly no shortage of paranoia or conspiracy theory in contemporary life that I think that you can still make a film that would resonate with a lot of people with a story like this. But will it take this particular shape? Maybe they'll tell that kind of story again.
The people you see online complaining about, like, oh, why is every horror film about trauma? And it's like, what did you think the horror films were about? They were saying they were about trauma. What you're sick of is them explicitly being about trauma. It's like, it's always like, you go back to, like we said before, Death Dream. Like, Death Dream is one of the most, it's about trauma. And this as well, like, it's so in no way discounting the homosexual subtext, really. It's like, it's also just as much, PTSD and the trauma of the First and Second World War. But the way we tell those stories is obviously very different. It's a lot more foregrounded because we're aware of it and we talk about it openly and publicly. So it's never going to be quite the same as this.
Films now make the mistake of articulating the themes outright in a way that can be distracting, but that happens in things like Death Dream too, like I died for you, won't you return the favor kind of lines are still making that text explicit. So, the metaphor being kind of spelled out, in the dialogue, I think is, but otherwise people think it's a plot hole if they don't state it because they think that they're missing something.
Being able to like sit in a sort of existential state where you're not entirely sure what the film is stating has been not entirely lost, but it's definitely not been the primary mode of filmmaking in the West for a long time. And I think, especially like watching this and the showdown at Boot Hill, where they're both films were like, oh, it's really explicitly about this, but also, I need to sit with this for a bit because it feels like it's pulled the manhole cover off of a very deep sewer of pain.
Well, if you look at Invasion of the Body Snatchers, that's a film that was claimed by people that said it was an anti-communist film and by people that said it was about McCarthyism and, the Red Scare. And so it's both sides of that issue saw the film they wanted in it. And I think that, by being ambiguous, it was a richer film for it because it didn't spell out everything in a way. And I think that I Married a Monster from Outer Space is the same way. But we can talk about it as about veterans. We talk about it as queer subtext. We can talk about it like as just representing gender conformity. And conformity is a theme that you get in I Was a Teenage Werewolf also. It's the whole idea is that he's not conforming to the rest of the high school, and that's the problem before he's even turning into a werewolf. He's like beating people up because he's not fitting in, and it's the anguish of everyone around him that why can't you just get along with everyone else? It's not questioned as a negative thing either. Like he's really like that is a problem, then they're trying to solve it before solving it the wrong way with the mad scientist. I think that's what makes the original film so compelling is that it can be read all those different ways. And, that's the danger of spelling out your metaphor too neatly is that you lose some of that kind of ability to interpret it a lot of ways.
Between the Circean melodrama of I Married a Monster from Outer Space and the loving homage of 50s sci-fi films that were in Poison, the middle section horror, I feel like Todd Haynes would be the most natural person to make a remake or take on a subject like that, like doing another I Married a Monster from Outer Space type movie. And I think he could play the hell out of it.
Well, I mean, think about Far From Heaven and the gay husband. Yeah, I mean, you could certainly he would be perfect for it. He would be very self-conscious about it, but I think that's fine.
Yeah, I definitely would not want to see that. Sorry, like because he's kind of too perfect for it in a way that is 20th century. Like, I would want to see one of these ratbag kids who's releasing their films on Tubi. Like, somebody who's just like really having to come up from underneath, who's in the absolute mire of the madness of current things, and just seeing them bring this could absolutely be brought to life in our current context in such a wild way.
A trans filmmaker could bring such a different way of approaching this if they wanted to.
Absolutely.
Does marriage mean the same thing now also that it would mean in 1958 is another question, because I think that's, I mean, very much an expectation to the degree that these guys that don't want to get married are being hounded into it in the original film. And I don't know, does that convention exist in quite the same way in 2026? I don't know if it does. I mean, in some parts of the country it does, but I don't know if it carries quite the same meaning as it would then.
I feel like the version of this film we're likely to get will be something to do with like trad wives and stuff, and that's a mistake because it's such a narrow corner of culture that's blown up more than it actually is, and it's so hollow and devoid of real meaning, and it would call back to what we think the original film is doing in our minds, rather than what it's actually doing. It should be something, more to do with like the trans experience and the misconceptions and the collisions of experiences and feelings.
Well, yeah, I think we may have gotten away from the narrative of gay people want to turn straight people gay, but the narrative.
Oh no, I think we're actually getting back around to that.
Okay, well, thank goodness.
I think it's alive and well.
Thank goodness. Well, that plays right into the
be gay, do crimes.
Yeah, that plays right into the teachers are teaching their your children to be trans and putting litter boxes in the school bathrooms. Like this insanity.
Drag queen story hour.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that we are now coming back to gay people want to turn you gay. So fantastic. Yeah.
The battle now is between the people who like say good when you say that and the people who are like terrified of it.
Yeah, one thing we haven't talked about, but I thought about also was the Stepford Wives and how that was a film that was played kind of straight in the 70s, and the only way they could approach it when they went back to it was as parody or as comedy. And I feel like that's also another way I could imagine them approaching this again would be as kind of more winking comedy than playing it straight.
Yeah, I think the remake definitely tried for that, but it didn't quite have the actors or anything to really emphasize.
Yeah, the writing, for sure.
The writing, definitely no.
It's been over 10 years since you and I first did one of these, Mike, and I was thinking like Demon Seed, and now we're coming full circle to another film where women are being forced into carrying the babies with inhuman threats. So it's good. We come full circle.
Well, I'll still continue to talk with you, Bill. We don't have to just do these types of movies, but it's always fun when we do.
Absolutely.
My theme with Mike is that I'm always in the 10 least downloaded episodes of the year. And I'm like, I don't know which one it's going to be this year, but I reckon we've done a couple that'll be there.
I just always appreciate that you're willing to talk about whatever movies. I mean, yes, you draw the line at The Astronaut's Wife, but I can respect that. I respect that.
I had a ticket to a movie marathon yesterday that was at the theater that was in The Blob. Speaking of films that, played on double bills with I Married a Monster. Instead, I stayed home to watch The Astronaut's Wife because I didn't have any other time to watch it. And so that was the sacrifice that I made.
Oh, you better send him a nice Christmas card, Mike.
You're due for a fruit basket for sure. All right, we're going to take another break and play a preview for next week's show right after these brief messages.
In the year 2013, one ordinary man
You are nothing but a drifter who found a bag of mail.
One simple act.
I know you'll do what's right.
And suddenly the future
Open the gates!
will never be the same.
Kill him! Kill the restored United States with him!
From the Academy Award-winning director of Dances with Wolves,
The United States Postman.
Kevin Costner.
You give out hope.
The Postman. Starts December 25th at a theater near you.
That's right. We'll be back next week with a look at the 1997 epic post-apocalyptic sci-fi film, The Postman. Until then, I want to thank my co-hosts Ben and Bill. So, Ben, what have you been up to lately, sir?
Just working on a few films. There's an Australian film called Shiver that I have no idea when it's coming up because it's still being processed at the moment, but that'll be a good one to keep an eye out for. It's the first Australian film shot in Antarctica, and was dabbling a bit in an A24 film that looks absolutely rad that I can't really talk about. So I get to be nice and mysterious this time. But other than that, pretty quiet here, traveling around Japan, prepping for a Suji Teriyama episode when you get around to doing him, Mike.
I will definitely do another. We did Pastoral a few years ago. I would love to do Throw Away Your Books or even Farewell to the Ark. You know, some of those. Yeah, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Good old Klaus Kinski. Shudders. I visited his museum. That was a hell of an experience, and I highly recommend that. And if for those people listening, if you ever get to Kyoto, look up the Toy Film Museum. Amazing experience run by an old couple out of their home, and that gave us a personal tour around, show us their paper films printed on paper, and just incredible collection of old cinema artifacts, and just amazing. So definitely check out the Toy Film Museum if you're interested in film history out there. But other than that, trying to get back onto writing for my letterbox. You can find me there under Dissolved Pet, one word, and on Blue Sky's Dissolved Pet as well, where I'm mainly talking to myself and raving about Widow's Bay at the moment, and that's pretty much my whole life.
And Bill, how about yourself?
I've mostly been working long hours with my day job, and I've been trying to finish up some projects that I can't talk about yet for home video stuff at night. So just been kind of busy. I think when I have time to edit them again, I will be returning my Supporting Characters podcast. I did have a new season that was in progress with people like Willow Caitlin McClay, Keith Gordon, a regular of your show, was on, Ryan Verrill, Jimmy McDonough, Fran Simeone from Radiance, Heidi Honeycutt. So plenty of long conversations, longer than podcasts are supposed to be from what I read. Conversations for people to check out. I think the last thing that came out from my home video work was Amanda Reyes and I did an audio commentary on the Arrow 4K for Salem's Lot, the Toby Hooper. So we did the miniseries version. So that's out there. And I think I did Goodbye Columbus and Baby It's You for fun. I did a bunch of commentaries, but that's the last thing I did. But trying to find time to get back to editing my own show and finish up a few things. But that's what I'm working on.
Thank you so much, guys, for being on the show. Thanks to everybody for listening. If you want to hear more of me shooting off my mouth, check out some of the other shows that I work on. They are all available at weirdingwaymedia.com. Thanks especially to our Patreon community. If you want to join the community, visit patreon.com/projection booth. Every donation we get helps the projection booth take over the world by loving your women.
With an alien being whose skin was jelly, whose teeth were green. She had the big bug eyes and the death ray glare. Feet like water wings, purple hair. I was over the moon. I asked her back to my place, and then I married the monster from outer space. The days were numbered, the nights were spent in a rent-free furnished oxygen tent where a cyborg chef served up moonbeams, done super rapid on a laser beam. I needed nutrition to keep up the pace when I married the monster from outer space. We walked out, tentacle in hand, you could sense that the earthlings would not understand a blob of slime each time I see a translucent face. I remember the monster from outer space.
Want to support physical media and get great movies in the mail? Head over to scarecrowvideo.org and try Scarecrow Video's incredible rent-by-mail service. Right, Matt?
That's right, Emily. The largest publicly accessible collection in the world. You'll find films that are entirely unavailable elsewhere. Get what you want, when you want it, directly to your door.
Again, visit scarecrowvideo.org now and watch us on Viva Physical Media every Sunday.